This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is a fantastic Friday edition. It's Friday, the second day of January 2015. That's right, 2015 already. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host along with my son Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear an incredible 3-hour program. Incredible because of our guest. Before we get into that, I just want to let you know, folks, you're listening to the only show where the news, information behind the news, behind the headlines is presented to you in 3D. We look beyond the headlines, behind the bylines, and bring you the news behind the news, the information that propels the headlines. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on the Internet. Our home base is hagmanandhagmann.com, and we're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. I want to thank them as well. There you can tune us in at Hagmann, or the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. Folks, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. And a minefield it is. A couple of announcements before we get into the show tonight. Monday, we're going to be a guest on the Power Hour, being hosted by Dr. Ted Broer, and that's going to be from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Next Wednesday, Steve Quayle, along with Tom Horn. Steve Quayle is going to be talking about his upcoming book that's going to be released here in the third week of January. Guy writes more books than I can keep up with. Little Creatures, indeed. And Tom Horn is going to be talking about what to expect in 2015. And then the following Friday, we're going to have Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford on, talking about what to expect in 2015, as well as his initiative for a National and International Day of Prayer. Looking forward to all of that, and especially next Monday morning. It was funny, I think I might have made a mistake last night, folks, about being on this morning. And
no,
it was just,
you did. You did make a mistake.
Yeah. Well, it was actually for Monday. So catch it Monday, the Power Hour, and we'll have some information on our website about that. But tonight, our very special guest is Dr. Ted Broer. Now, let me tell you something. Look, folks, I'm going to tell you right now. Just go to hagmanandhagmann.com and click on. If you see that, you'll see the tabs on the top there. Obviously, you'll see his face pop up there in our news feed, but also under guests. You can click under guests there, look under that, and the entire there's a page dedicated to Ted Broer, and there you can read about. Well, you can read his bio, and also you can catch the past shows, being December 18th and December 1st. He's internationally recognized. He's internationally recognized as a leader in the health and nutrition industry. He's a health and nutrition expert. And I got to tell you, since he has come into my life on a professional level, I have I've never felt better, and I mean this. I've been plagued with some pretty odd health issues. Okay, would be type 2 diabetes and heart issues, and you feel like you've been hit by a train when you get up in the morning. I've got all kinds of I could just I can complain to you all night. But the fact of the matter is, Dr. Broer got me on a regimen that really has made I don't know whether you can hear it in my voice, but I feel stronger. I feel better. I'm more active. I'm less tired. I'm more mentally focused. And this is not a sales pitch. This is just a personal testimony of mine. I didn't think it was possible. I really didn't. I kind of wanted to just lay down, curl up in a fetal position, and just stay in bed for days. But again, Dr. Ted Broer had come to my aid, and I think Joe can attest to what he's done in my life. His education includes an undergraduate degree in biological science and chemistry from Florida State University. He's also completed a second undergraduate degree. Most people can't even do a first one, from Florida State University in psychology and exercise physiology. He's got a master's degree in business administration from FSU, received a doctorate from Southeastern University, and he might, I'm not sure, but he might have tagged along during the first moon landing, based on everything I've heard. Health Masters is his website, Health Masters, as well as you just go to Health Masters, and there you can, from there you can branch out and do all the different types of all of his websites. But his book, Breakthrough Health, is an incredible book. It's featured on the front page of our website, Breakthrough Health. I've got to tell you, You get that book, and any questions you have about any ailments, impairments, whatever, that's the book to answer those questions. Now, pizza in the morning for me, and followed by a pot of coffee, and maybe maybe 2 pots. I don't know. But the pizza in the morning thing, that was me all along. Now he has completely changed my life, and I feel so much better for it. I'm not going to go into any more of his bio. You can read it on HagmannHagmann.com under his guest page. He's got his own page on our website, and you can grab a hold of the previous audios. Now, he shared the stage with many notable people: Pastor Rob Parsley, Herman Bailey, T.D. Jakes, Bill Cosby, as a matter of fact. Hey, Bill, how you doing? Former President George Bush, Barbara Bush, and others. Gerald Ford, Paul Harvey, Larry King, and Colin Powell, just to name a few. Not name dropping, but just telling it like it is. But, okay, before we bring them on, Joe, I guess I didn't really bring you on, did I? Welcome tonight. Welcome to the studio. It's great to have you here. And
yeah,
of course, you're here all day.
Yeah, we were supposed to. We have an interview scheduled with Ted for Monday, and we'll call it a senior moment in your newfound health. We're sitting here waiting for the call, and 9 o'clock comes around, and we turn on the show, and we hear it's not Ted hosting the show, and sure enough, my dad checks his email, and he says, this interview's on Monday, not today. So we had a full day at the studio today.
But you know what, folks? All the things that I needed to have done, magically they're done. So you think it was a senior moment? I don't know. Could it be a conspiracy? I think perhaps on my part. But anyway, Dr. Ted Brewer, welcome to the Hagmann Hagmann Report. It's great to have you back.
Hey, Doug. Hey, Joe. It's good to be back. I'm a little bit worn out from that football game last night. As you know, I graduated from Florida State 3 times. You just told everybody that. And, we didn't just get beat last night by the Oregon Ducks, by the way. Congratulations, Oregon. We got a brass-knuckle beat down in the back alley last night with that football game. I mean, it was awful. And so Florida State no longer is a 29-game unbeaten streak. The Ducks showed us how the real world works. So it was interesting. But the Ducks just absolutely outplayed us in every aspect of the game.
Yeah, I happened to see some of the highlights. And I don't watch football. I used to watch football a lot. But I happened to see some of the highlights, and I thought, my goodness. Yeah, that was it took you
it was ugly.
Shit. It was.
I had to turn it off after about the middle of the third quarter. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go watch something edifying and uplifting. I had enough of this. This is just awful. I mean, I already knew where that outcome was going to go. But we're going to talk about some healthy stuff tonight. We're going to talk about how to lower blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, blood sugar levels. We're going to detail how to burn body fat. We're going to talk about everybody's weight loss goals they're having for the New Year's is how to burn body fat and increase energy. We're also going to talk about cancer. Haven't really done that on your show before, but I want to talk about cancer and natural alternative treatment protocols for folks who have cancer, and also treatment protocols to be using to avoid cancer. We're going to discuss epigenetics tonight. We're going to go into detail how the food that you eat that's been genetically modified can actually change your own genetics, change your own DNA, and that change can be passed on to your children through the sperm and through the egg of mother and father. So that's a pretty doggone frightening thing. We're going to talk about the real causes of cancer. We're going to go into detail more on GMOs. We're going to talk about different types of toxic flu treatments that are being approved by the government, and about how now the CDC is now telling us that we're having a huge epidemic of flu. Well, guess what? Their things don't work anyhow, so we'll talk about how to avoid the flu. And then we have an interesting topic today. Scientists are terrified of geoengineering technology being developed under guise of halting global warming. This is one of the scientists who worked on this. I want to discuss that in detail today. And then we want to go into detail on different things about wheat, and we want to talk about what happens with leaky gut syndrome, and we want to go into detail on its research, how plants can cure cancer, not chemicals. Let me start off by reading this. This is a very interesting paragraph, and it says, I anticipate a time in the not-too-distant future when the conventional medical establishment freely acknowledges that cancer is a natural response to decades of cumulative exposures to unnatural, evolutionary, unprecedented chemical, electromagnetic, psycho-spiritual exposures and conditions. Instead of vilifying and violently suppressing the symptom of this perfect storm of toxicity, cancer, enlightened practitioners will learn to address, remove, and redress the root causes, focusing on reproducing the conditions that support our genetic and epigenetic blueprint of health and wellness. It is the goal of this website that I'm reading from to provide the public and professional populations a resource in order to do this. In other words, what he's saying is it's not the cancer that's the problem. It's the diet and lifestyle choices that we are doing that are causing so many people to develop cancer. And so that's one of the big things we want to talk about tonight, along with the burning the body fat. And we'll even tell you there are actually some ways you can actually burn and melt cellulite. I know you never thought you'd hear me talk about cellulite. For all the women that weren't listening, now they're listening. And so that's one thing that's interesting about burning body fat, and how there are certain ways that actually do help to do that. So we can talk about those tonight too. And so where do you guys want to get started?
Let's start with the genetically modified foods and cancer. We have some headlines today. We talked about this biological bad luck blamed for 2/3 of cancer, and also the genetically modified foods such as rice and can be seen in your blood and your organs. It says this is earth-shattering news. Genetically modified foods carry huge risks for humans, and the larger risks that have never before been seen have now been found by scientists, and they say that these changes manipulate your DNA, and now they can alter and whole way your body functions. And how dangerous is this to our health?
Joe, they're unbelievable. I mean, I've talked about this, and I have a whole chapter in the Breakthrough Health about this. The reality is that the epigenetics, which we now are just learning how this stuff works, and the changing of our own personal DNA by the corruption of our DNA with these genetically modified foods, is, I personally believe, one of the globalist primary plans for depopulation of the planet. I believe they're going to render us pretty much infertile here within 1 or 2 generations. I know corn that's given to mice that's been genetically modified, within 3 generations of the mice, they can no longer reproduce. They've got hair growing out of their mouths. They're completely sterile, and it's unbelievably horrible because they're covered in cancer tumors. I mean, within just about 45 days after starting the use of these types of genetically modified foods. So I believe that Monsanto, the great uber evil corporation that's basically poisoning the whole planet with their use of the GMOs, including now they've also put it into the canola plants into Europe against the European wishes, is basically going to come in and basically destroy the planet. And I think that they're doing it, because of their uber spiritual, unbelievably satanic roots that so many of these corporations are based out of. And it's just, it's absolutely awful. I mean, today I walked outside, and there were literally 70 chemtrails in the sky. I mean, the thing was completely covered up in chemtrails. I remember I lived down here in Florida. This used to be called the Sunshine State. Now they just need to call us the Chemtrail State, because we used to have, 340 days of sunshine, and now it's literally, every other day is completely opaque and overcast. And they're basically saying that it's not because of the weather, it's because of the chemtrails, because they're basically changing the chemtrails and changing the weather with the geoengineering. And what's interesting, let me pull this article up, because we're talking about that right now. This is an interesting thing, because I really want to talk too about the problems associated with Roundup again. We talked about that last time. I hope everybody who listens stops using Roundup. Go ahead, guys. What are you saying?
No, I agree. We did touch on that. In fact, folks joining us late, if you go to HagmannHagmann.com, there under the guest tab, Dr. Ted Brewer, all the information about him, his bio, his website, and his previous interviews there via SoundCloud, as well as the MP3 files. And we did talk about this. Ted, I got to tell you, man, the information that you have in those 2 interviews is just, it's incredible. So I would urge everyone to listen to both interviews, both prior interviews, and then this one, of course. So go ahead when you're ready, sir.
Okay, that's okay. But the whole thing about it is, what we have to realize is that the scientists that are now talking about what's been done as far as the chemtrails, they're basically saying that they had no idea. Now they're going to start spraying sulfur in the atmosphere, and of course sulfur is probably not going to be as bad for the soil as the barium and the aluminum has been, because these nano-sized particles of aluminum basically are not found in nature that way, and they're toxic to every living thing, including plants. And they also go right into the olfactory system, directly into the brain, giving you a massive increase in Alzheimer's disease. So, we've got a serious issue here, Doug and Joe, that if we don't realize that what we're doing and what they're doing to us is really happening. See, that's the biggest problem we have with this is learned helplessness. I had a guy just email me tonight, and he goes, I don't even know what to do, Ted. He goes, I try to tell people about chemtrails. I show them in the sky. I tell them to look up. And they look at me and they laugh, and they say, that's not real. And he said, they're looking at them, and they say it's not real. And it's just unbelievable that we used to have blue skies, and now the skies are gone. And sadly enough, I mean, we don't even know what to do with this particular problem because, the filtration systems that most households are going to have simply won't go that low as far as the nanometer size that these things they're so tiny. And so we basically are being subjected to it. I mean, we can drink distilled water, we can take our good high-quality supplements, we can eat non-GMO food, we can do everything we're supposed to do, but we go outside, we still got to breathe the air. And so we're going to have a massive decrease as far as, mental acuity and all these other types of things because of this. Now, some people say they're also because of the weapons radar systems that they're using, the scalar weather systems. You guys, radar systems, you guys know more about that than I do. And they say that they're also being used for that because if an ICBM were to come in, that they would actually interfere with the ICBM's launch of its payload or its warheads as far as on their tracking. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. In addition to that, some researchers are saying it's because of the UFOs, that they're actually spraying these things up here to try to confuse the tracking systems on the unidentified flying objects. And quite frankly, I really didn't believe a whole lot of that kind of stuff. I was trying to avoid all that whole topic. I knew it was real, but I didn't want to think about it. But then I read that book the day after Roswell a few weeks ago, about a month and a half ago. I don't know if you guys have read that book or not. And I tell you what, that book will snap you tight because that was written by a full-bird colonel from the military who's one of the top people in the administration of Eisenhower, Truman, and Kennedy. And basically he was the guy who was in charge of all of the alien artifacts that were taken off that spaceship. And he waited until, I guess, his 50-year statute of limitations had expired from 1947 and wrote this book in 1997. And I don't know, have you guys read that book?
It's one of the books that we have on our list to order, Ted.
Okay.
I was going to do it last time, and yeah, I got to read that book. I've just got to, based on your recommendation.
Well, the thing about it is that you don't realize what's really going on. He said much of our technology today. He said that basically the fiber optic systems, the Kevlar material, the lasers, and also the circuit board all came off that spaceship, and also particle beam weapons. Now, I don't know why the guy would lie, and there were several generals that endorsed the book. I mean, 4 and 5 stars, 3 and 4 star generals that said every word of the book was completely true. So I don't know. The thing I've learned about the military guys, unless they're being involved in the New World Order, they don't really lie a lot. Especially if they've been out of the military for many, many years, they just don't do that. My father-in-law is a colonel. He's also a full-bird colonel out of the Air Force, and the guy everything's always by the book, by the book, by the book, by the book. And so I don't understand why these guys would just come up with these crazy stories, 50 years after they've, experienced all of these things. He actually said he took the files from the Roswell case and all of the artifacts and had the stuff. He's the one who was responsible for sending them out and getting them reverse engineered. So, I mean, that's a pretty bold statement to make if it's a lie. I don't even know what to say about that.
Of course. Well, and just look at our history with respect to electronics and technology following 1947 and then into the 50s and 60s, and look at the technological explosion that we've undergone here, and especially in the last couple of decades. And now we've had, obviously, meaning the government, the elites, have had this technology long before we have seen it, but it certainly does follow the timeline, I would think, anyway. But interesting nonetheless. So these chemtrails, I mean, and this is something that I tried to rationalize in my head. Okay, because we used to drive all over the eastern part of the United States, and he used to say, "Look up," and I kind of, I would laugh, really, and say, "Come on, that's just plain junk." Basically. And he said, no, it's real. And then he convinced me. I mean, my younger son convinced me, my son, 30 years old now, I'm 31, you convinced me that these things were real. But let me ask you, Ted, what were they originally intended for? Did you have any, if you were to guess? Or
Well, if you read this book on this Roswell incident, this guy says a lot of what's going on now as far as the weapons research systems are to basically prevent extraterrestrial incursion into the United States. I didn't know that the Army has an entire space-based weapon program, and I didn't know they had all that. And he actually gives the website to go to in that. And sure enough, I plugged it in, and there it was. And it was interesting. It was like Space Command. I mean, it's like something you see in Buck Rogers, except it's real. And he was talking about the different things that they were doing as far as the moon and Mars. I mean, all these crazy things, Doug, that you'd think were just nonsense. And then and this is a full-board colonel writing about all this stuff. And I'm like, this is just odd to me that he's actually doing all this and disclosing all this information. And of course, the book was written 18 years ago. And I had never heard of it until I had read another book, The Money Mafia, by, I guess it was Holger, the guy who basically was that Canadian Prime Minister, and he had recommended reading that book, and he was quoting the generals in his book saying that every word of that book was real. And he was actually talking about the alien influence on the planet. And, I'm a scientist, right? When I start reading about stuff like that, when I can't quantify it and I can't see it and I can't do a double-blind clinical research study on it, I'm just kind of like, well, okay, really? I mean, this is really far out there. Do I really want to believe all of this stuff? And with the thing with the chemtrails, I was like you. I'm like, whatever. They wouldn't do that. I mean, they're poisoning themselves. So my whole thing is if they're doing it, they're poisoning themselves. So finally, I remember a few years ago, I went ahead and ran 2 separate samples of the water. I mentioned this before with you on the air, and basically they were so high in barium and in aluminum, both samples, that they were no longer considered safe to drink by the EPA. And I thought, well, that's not coming out of the atmosphere normally. I mean, we don't have those things hitting the atmosphere. I mean, somebody's putting that stuff in the atmosphere, and then I began to realize that it was real. I mean, I couldn't pretend like it wasn't happening, and even when I give people the results of the tests, they still don't believe it's real because nobody wants to believe this. I mean, it's learned helplessness. It's all part of the good old-fashioned, Pavlovian responses. They've taught us all this stuff that, they basically tell us that, believe the government is good, the government would never do anything bad to hurt you, the FDA is there to protect you, and it's just like the fatal drug administration is what I call the FDA. It's awful. And the reality is that if we don't learn that we can't trust these agencies, and I love the new stuff they say. Well, they misspoke. Well, that means they lied. And they say they misspoke about this treatment or this drug protocol when they don't bother to tell you that 50% of all drugs within 5 years are either pulled off the market because they're so toxic or they have to have their labels changed. 50%. And this morning I spoke to a friend of mine I've known for many years. Her name's Rosa. And she's a German lady, and she was from Germany, and she's on like 10 different prescription drugs. And I told her, I said, Rosa, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'm taking metformin, and I'm taking Crestor, and she starts listing all the stuff. And then she tells me, she goes, and Ted, I don't know why. She goes, when I was on your program taking your vitamins, I had so much energy I didn't know what to do with myself when I wasn't taking any drugs. And then I went to the doctor, and he told me, oh, no, you can't take his vitamins. You've got to take these drugs. She goes, now I feel absolutely horrible. All I want to do is sleep all day, and I don't even want to get out of bed in the morning. She goes, it doesn't matter how much coffee I drink. I'm always tired. I'm always exhausted. She goes, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, Rosa, maybe you need to find another doctor in your area who's not going to put you on 10 prescription drugs. I said, Crestor, we know, causes heart disease. It's supposed to prevent it, but it causes it. It causes liver damage. It causes kidney damage, and it also causes cancer. So we know it does all of those things. I said, metformin, we know that it causes pancreatic cancer. And I said, so wouldn't you rather take the cinnamon extract that helps to stabilize blood sugar rather than taking all of these different types of drugs for diabetes? And she goes, no, the doctor told me I couldn't take that. And I said, why not? She goes, well, he said not to take it. And I said, what for? Why did he say no? He goes, well, he wouldn't tell me why. Well, the reason why is he didn't know. Doug, because most medical doctors don't even take but a few hours of nutrition in their medical classes. The whole thing is based on the Rockefeller model, which I write about extensively in my book, in which we have to do basically the drug solution to everything that's wrong with us. In other words, you have to look at you've got a problem with a headache, you must have a deficiency, of aspirin or Tylenol or another one of these drugs, and they don't even bother going into detail on what all of these drugs do and all the side effects, and how aspirin and ibuprofen cause leaky gut syndrome, causing horrible problems with macromolecular absorption through this large intestine, which gives you an unbelievable amount of allergies and gluten sensitivity, which can also, and then if you've got a problem with gluten on top of that, and you're absorbing it directly through your gut because you're taking all these NSAIDs, the ibuprofen and the aspirin, then what ends up happening is you have all these health problems. You start bleeding through your intestines, and it's just absolutely crazy how it increases the permeability of the intestinal tract when you take these types of chemicals, and people don't understand how dangerous they are. I mean, one of the things that people don't realize is if you take aspirin on a regular basis, it's such a potent blood thinner that it can actually cause wet macular degeneration. Now, I don't know if I've ever mentioned that on the show before. And what it does, it makes the blood so thin that what it does, it causes the retina to detach from the back of the eye because it makes those little tiny blood vessels in the back of the eyeball bleed. And the retina actually detaches and causes macular degeneration. In addition to that, it can cause gastric bleeding and all kinds of other problems. That's why in my book I have the top 10 drugs never to use in the non-steroidal inflammatory things, or the NSAIDs are one of the ones that I tell people not to use, including the aspirin and Tylenol. Tylenol is one of the primary causes of liver failure in the United States. I mean, if you go out and have a shot of Jack Daniels and take 4 extra strength Tylenol with it, you're probably going to have a liver transplant in a couple of days. It's that poisonous. And people don't understand it's not good for you to take these types of drugs on an ongoing basis because of the damage they do to your genetics, to your organs, to your liver, to your spleen, to your kidneys, to your lungs, to everything. And so people get caught up in this stuff. They get up in the morning and they've got to start off with their painkillers. They get up in the morning, they got to start off with all their medicines and all their drugs, and then they walk through the rest of the day walking around in a stupor, wondering what in the world happened to them because they feel so absolutely awful. They never realize that it could be this bad living through this world. I mean, they're basically walking zombies. And see, that's what the drug culture has done to us. And I'm not talking about the illegal drug culture, Doug. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about the drug culture that permeates America today. That is the overuse of prescription drugs, especially opiates. What is it? 90% of the world uses 5% of the opiates? I mean, what does that mean? Well, we got a lot of people that are addicted to opiates. And opiates are incredibly addictive because of the way they basically bind they bind pain receptors, and then basically you don't feel pain with them, and then pretty soon you get addicted to them, and your body would rather die than come off the opiates. And so that's actually one of those drugs that if you come off of it and you don't have it done properly, you can actually die from it. The same thing is true as far as all the different types of tricyclic antidepressants. I had Dr. John Rappaport was on with me the other day when I was doing my show on the Power Hour. And by the way, everybody listening tonight, on Monday, I get to put Joe and Doug on the hot seat for an hour, and we get to let all the folks call in, ask them a bunch of questions, and I can just kind of sit back and chill. But the reality is that that's the Power Hour, and it airs all over the internet, and I think it's got a bunch of terrestrial stations on it. So it's a huge show. It's like the Hagmann Hagmann broadcast. But the thing that people don't understand is that if you continue to do all of the things that the drug companies tell you to do, you just have more and more horrible side effects as far as the drugs. And I told Rosa, she says, well, I have no energy and I feel absolutely awful. And I told her, I said, well, I love you, Rosa, so I can pray for you. I said, but until you decide that you want to change your lifestyle and go to a physician who'll take you off of these prescription drugs that you're on, there's not a whole lot you can do from a nutritional standpoint since you're 73 years old to change this. Now, here's a good testimony. My mother-in-law was taking Nexium. She'd been taking it for years. Well, I didn't know she was taking that. She kind of was keeping that kind of secret here. But she moved into a house next door to us. And so she basically, is feeling great. And then finally I asked her one day, I said, how many prescription drugs are you taking? She said, well, the only thing I'm taking is Nexium. And Nexium basically is a drug that stops hydrofluoric acid production. So if you're having, acid reflux, you don't have the acidity going back up in your stomach from into your throat. The problem with that is that it's a problem that is not primarily caused by too much acid. It means it's not enough acid because the esophageal ring that closes off the stomach doesn't have enough acidity detected in the stomach to close it off. It thinks you're still eating. And so that's why that ring stays open. If you increase the amount of acid in your stomach with using digestive enzymes, then you can basically stop that without having to take the Nexium. I had another friend of mine who called me from college today. He was calling me. His name's Steve Sanzone. He was talking to me about the Florida State beatdown last night with the football game. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for 40 years. And he was telling me about that he had a problem, with the Nexium. And the craziest thing is that we have people that nobody realizes how many people out there are taking these anti-acid drugs that cause horrible, horrible side effects, including bone loss and all types of nutrient malabsorption. And my mother-in-law, by the way, now she's doing the digestive enzymes. She's completely off the Nexium. Her energy's coming up. Plus, she was drinking 5 or 6 cups of coffee a day, which is one of the worst things you can do for your adrenals. You've got to learn to limit the amounts of caffeine that you put in. And the green tea extracts are okay, like our purple sticks, but you don't want to be just sitting around sucking down cups of coffee every day. That's what I used to do when I was in graduate school at Florida State. I used to drink 18 cups of coffee a day. And I told you my story last time. And when I was 27 years old, I basically came down with a disease called pericarditis, which is inflammation of the pericardial sac around the heart. And Doug almost died from it. And so I had to completely change my diet and change my whole attitude of what I was going to put into my body, because we got to remember, we've got to eat clean if we're going to stay healthy. And eating clean now means we've got to stay away from the fluoride, we've got to stay away from the GMOs, we've got to stay away from the chlorine, we've got to stay away from the sodium nitrite, we've got to stay away from the pork products, we've got to stay away from foods that have been fed organic, non-organic chicken. In other words, if you give a chicken non-organic corn to eat, that chicken's going to change its epigenetics to change to that corn. The chicken's DNA is going to change, and the eggs that it's giving off are going to be contaminated with GMO food. That's how crazy this is. So we have chickens here at the house, and so we have to give them organic feed on top of everything else.
Yeah, and looking into the Codex Alimentarius implemented by the World Health Organization. This was a international body that created an international standard for harmonized food protection for the health of the world, as they say. But they talk about in the frequently asked questions, they ask, is GMOs food safe, and what are the risks and concerns to the human health? They talk about gene transfers, how genes can transfer from the GMO foods to cells in the body or to the bacteria in the, as you said, the gastrointestinal tract, that would cause concern if the transferred material adversely affected the human health. But they go on to say that this is a very low possibility of this happening, and the gene transfer technology is they say their science shows that the risks are minimal to none, and that GMOs are safer, more efficient. But at the same time, since the Codex Alimentarius has been implemented, they also state that the rate of cancer and other illnesses have increased, almost right parallel with the implementation of these international food and nutrition standards.
Well, no, that's exactly right. And see, the more we tamper with the food, see, here's the thing. We talked about this on the last show in more depth than we were going to tonight. But the thing about it is that we're frequency beings. Okay, we're made of sound waves, basically. And and when we have DNA that's also made of sound waves that interacts with our DNA made of sound waves, what happens is it has to kind of reach a harmonic convergence, if that makes any sense. It changes based upon the DNA that we're putting into it. And so that's why the epigenetics does what it does, is because of how we're made. See, God made us so that, we could control this world that we live in by the words of our mouth and by the power of our speech and by the power of our prayer and all the things that's going on. And if we as a nation we just turn and humble ourselves and fall on our knees and pray, which I don't think is going to happen, and basically say, God, we repent for what we've done. Please forgive us. The cumulative prayers of the righteous would change the United States of America. We'd have our country back. But the problem is Satan's bunch has come in here now and has basically taken it over. I had a real good show with Tom Horn the other day. He was one of my guests on the show, and I couldn't believe that guy. That guy will blow up the phone lines. Wow. And, everybody wanted to talk to Tom and ask him questions. And the craziest thing was that he said the same thing. He said the United States basically was not founded by a certain member of the forefathers, as a Christian, quote-unquote, country. It was founded basically as the new Atlantis. And, and Paul McGuire talks about that, too. And that we think that this is a Christian country. Well, why don't you go up to the Washington monuments and all those places up there? Why don't you find me a statue of Jesus Christ somewhere? I'm not seeing that in Washington, D.C. It's not there. And so, so the reality is this. We've basically been sold a bill of goods. We had some Christians who were the forefathers, and they basically, really built a lot of stuff on Christian principles. But we, the people, have allowed that to completely change. In 1933, basically, when the United States went bankrupt, and the bankers basically took control of us in receivership, and then what happened, when all the gold was seized, and all of this stuff goes on and on, all the way back from 1913 with the passage of the Federal Reserve Act and the Income Tax Act. And so the sad part about all of this stuff is that the vast majority of the population still doesn't know. Now they've been so dumbed down, their IQs are below 100 on the average, and they don't want to know, they don't care. All they're trying to do basically is worry about how they're going to pay their bills and how they're going to basically get to work the next day and how they're going to pay their insurance, and they've turned into an entire slave state. And then, of course, we've given them all the fluoride and all of the GMOs, which are making them sicker and sicker and sicker, and there's no telling what else they're putting into the doggone chemtrails. I know there's biologicals in them. I couldn't test for that because I didn't know what to look for, but I know that there have been studies that have shown there are biologicals in there, and what in the world's that doing, and how's that linking to Morgellons disease when we're pulling these fibers out of people's skin that look like thread. And when we go ahead and have them analyzed, they can't find any fibers like that on the planet. And when they're given a certain frequency, these fibers start to reproduce and start to divide. Well, what the heck does that mean? Does that mean if they hit us with a particular frequency, if we have these fibers in our body, that our body's DNA is going to completely change and transform us into something else? Is that what the goal was of Genesis chapter 6? Is that what they're doing again? Is that why Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be with the returning of the Son of Man? Is that why Jesus warned us what was going to happen with the genetic manipulation of the people? Now, I'm going to repeat that because I said that really, really fast. What happens with Morgellons disease? These are like microscopic plants that are growing out of people's skin and arms and legs, fibers. They don't even know what they are. They can't isolate them. And when they pull them out, they can't figure out what they are or where they came from, but they know when they're hit with a specific frequency of sound, they start to divide and multiply and grow. If they're inside of the person and somebody decided to start beaming a particular frequency around us, what would happen to us if these things were within sight of us. I mean, nobody's thinking about this stuff. I mean, what's the plan here? What's the plan of these chemtrails? Is it that nefarious they're trying to change the human population into something else? I don't know, guys, but it sure seems weird to me. And so that's the thing I don't understand. I mean, is it that messed up? Are these aliens that this colonel talked about in this book, The Day After Roswell? Are they really that prevalent today in our society? Are they really running the current affairs of the world? I have no idea. I don't even know if the guy was, smoking crack before he wrote the book. I have no idea what the guy's talking about. But the point is, this whole thing doesn't make any sense. I mean, you had the other day you had the guy on who was thinking about the Nibiru or Planet X is coming back again.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. I mean, the sad part about this is he sounds as credible as anybody else on the research, because what's going on with these giant underground military bases with all this food storage and all the stuff that they're doing, Doug? I mean, none of it makes any sense to me. Does it make any sense to you?
Not at all. And folks, and Ted, I got a I talked to Steve Quayle today this morning early, and he said that the supply shipments to these deep underground bases now are seeming to be ramping up. We're talking about 500 convoys of 50 500 convoys, 50 trucks each, on a 24/7 rotating basis, going to these deep underground military bases and other bases. So it seems like something is taking place, something is ramping up here, and I just thought I'd mention that. But none of this really makes sense looking at it through the normal paradigm.
Well, no, I mean, I try to be a Christian, okay? Sometimes I'm better than other times. Sometimes I'm a really lousy Christian. Doesn't mean I'm not saved. I'm just not as good as I should be, okay? But I'm still born again. I still try to do what's right in God's eyes. And the problem that we have being Christians is that we don't realize the level of evil that exists around us. Does that make sense?
I mean, perfect sense.
You guys are private investigators. You've seen it all, okay? And, I mean, I've seen a lot when I was a kid. But the craziest thing is that the vast majority of the people out there are living this Pollyanna existence because they're being fed tricyclic antidepressants and Prozac in the water supply anyhow for the municipalities. And what's crazy about this, they're all living in this happy world where they think everything's going great, and they have no idea of what's going on around them with the human sacrifice and the sacrifice of children and the abduction of children and the child slave sex rings that are running everywhere. They have no idea what's going on with any of this stuff. And and if you try to tell them about it, whether you saw what Ted Gunderson discovered, they think you're nuts. And there's another credible witness. Ted Gunderson was the head of the FBI for L.A. County, for heaven's sakes. He wasn't trying to make this stuff up. He didn't want to know about it either. If you read his stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. You said you think this Planet X thing is coming at us again, or you think that this is just more obfuscation from the media?
I think there's something to it. I think there's something to it. I don't know what exactly it is, and but frankly, I think that there's definitely something to the Nibiru Planet X, and there's that cycle involved in that. But to be honest, what it is, I don't know.
Even metaphorically, representing the coming of something else, I believe in that aspect there could be something to it. But we see in our world, we investigate the manipulation of the news and the social and cultural human nature of people. This is what the news has been doing. But what we don't see is what you're talking about, is the manipulation of the air, the water, the food, and the chemicals that is in turn manipulating our human bodies and the way they function.
Well, you're right. I had Ann Barnhart on my show last week, and she was talking about, where have all the men gone? And I started joking with her that she probably had more testosterone than 80% of the men in the United States. And I told her, I said, the reason this has happened, Ann, is because it was planned that way. It was planned with the bisphenol A. Back in the 40s, it was planned with the fluoride. It was planned with all of these estrogen mimickers that have been put into the food supply. And so what's happened is we've intentionally lowered the testosterone levels of men in the United States in the past 60, 70 years, and it was done on purpose. And now we have a bunch of metro boys running around. You don't know if they're boys or girls. They got, their arms are like 8 inches around, and they don't work out. They don't exercise. They're not involved in sports. They wear girls' pants. I mean, it's the nuttiest thing I've ever seen. And I'm not saying they're gay. I'm just saying that they're metro. They're just different. And it's like a whole new classification of subspecies that we've developed from the manipulation of the DNA by putting all this stuff into the food supply and into the water supply, especially when women are pregnant and they're ingesting all these xenoestrogens. And the sad part about this is we now think this is okay. We think this type of behavior for boys is okay. And I've tried to explain that to Ann. She goes, oh, no, that's just an excuse that people are making. I said, no, Ann, that's really what's happening. I said, guys aren't supposed to look like this. I mean, they're really not supposed to look like girls. It's the hormonal thing. And she was funny, though. I tell you, I learned something with Ann. She's a great guest. But boy, I tell you what, she can get the callers mad if you let her talk to people, because she'll just tell them to shut up, hang up, and they go stick their head back in the sand and not listen to the truth.
Oh man, we had Ann on our show probably a year and a half ago, and like to get her back on. Boy, what a firecracker she is!
Oh, she's amazing.
Like it is. Yeah, and she's very intelligent. Boy, yeah, she can hold her own. Let me tell you.
Yeah, when you don't want to get on her bad side.
Well, I like Ann. Now, listen real quick. Let's talk about 6 body tissues that can actually be regenerated by basically changing our diets. And I like this too, because it goes back to the regeneration potential of the body and what can be done. And basically, nerve generation has actually been shown that you can actually regenerate nerves. The peripheral nervous system can be regenerated. And one of the best things you can do is you can take the turmeric, and we use that in our GHI cleanse. There's a whole bunch of other things that also does this too, that basically are subclasses. And you can also regenerate liver. The people don't realize you can actually cut most of your liver out, leave one lobe of your liver intact, and it will actually grow back, kind of like a lizard's tail. People don't even realize.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah, the liver's a myth.
Okay. What did you mention before that? You talked rather quickly before the liver regeneration.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about 6 bodily tissues that can be redone through regeneration potential of the nerves, of the peripheral nerve system. Yeah.
So something like diabetic neuropathy, that can be... You're saying that could be handled? I mean,
in some cases, the diabetic neuropathy can get better. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I've seen it multiple times. Yes, that is absolutely true. And so that you can actually have that repaired. But the problem is when you're taking all of the insulin, which is a salt, that's the problem. You have a very hard time doing that with the insulin. The things that are really good, again, for liver regeneration, of course, that would be milk thistle, the curcumin or the GHI cleanse again, and vitamin E. They work really, really good on helping to regenerate the liver. And that's one of the things. I mean, we've had so many people call up and they said basically, I've got a problem with my liver. And I said, well, at least it's a good one to have a problem with. You can help to restabilize hormones. There's all kinds, vitamin C helps to do that. You can also take different types of, testosterone or progesterone or whatever you have. You can do it transdermally. You can do all that. Helps support the glands. Cardiac cell regeneration. That's been proven repeatedly on studies. You can take resveratrol. You can take Siberian ginseng. You can take red wine extract. I don't recommend drinking red wine because of the alcoholism factor associated with it. Of course, coenzyme Q10 and vitamin E are great for cardiac cells. And cartilage and spine regeneration. There's all kinds of natural things that you can do as far as with the GHI cleanse and the turmeric and resveratrol, and you have actually shown to increase in the recovery of spinal cord injuries. I mean, there's all kinds of natural things, again, that you can do from a nutrition standpoint to rebuild your entire body without, taking these horrible, horrible drugs. And that's the thing that people need to realize is the drugs cause all kinds of horrible side effects. And again, stay away from your artificial sweeteners like Splenda. Splenda has been shown, this is sucralose, to actually cause diabetes, and also has been shown to calcify the kidneys. And remember, this is a chlorine atom that you're ingesting. It's absolute poison to the body, and you need to avoid it altogether. And you need to avoid dairy products that are not state certified organic. I prefer the raw ones, but they've got to be state certified, and that's what you need to be doing. There's all kinds of natural things like this that you can do that really, really make your system super healthy without having to take a bunch of drugs. I mean, does that make any sense to anybody but me? Because it just works.
Yeah, and you know what, Ted, as we get into the year 2015 and beyond, who in the heck knows? Number one, the availability of prescription drugs, whether it be metformin, insulin, or whatever. I mean, anyone who's read the book 1 second after will know that there's going to be a whole lot of people dying because they can't get their medication. Wouldn't it be great for everyone listening to be able to get off of this medication and use the natural way to health? And of course, your guiding us along to that. So we don't have to be dependent upon this pharmaceutical industry that's really killing us.
Right.
When they say they're trying to help us.
Remember, I read an article, and I quote this on my website. It's from the Financial Times. It's from several years ago, and it said that it basically said it was the fiduciary responsibility of every pharmaceutical corporation to sell as many drugs as they possibly could, because that was how they increased their profits for their stockholders, and that basically they wanted to find a drug like insulin for the treatment of cancer, which would allow that person to be on that drug for years, if not decades, at the treatment of the cancer, so they can increase the profits of the corporations. I mean, this is their technology that they're going to. They're not trying to cure anything. They're trying to keep you on a drug for an indefinite period of time so you never can come off of it. That's why the tricyclic antidepressants are so difficult to come off of. John Rappaport and I discussed that in detail on the show the other day, and that basically it's dangerous to come off of some of these drugs because of the suicidal behavioral tendencies that are caused by them. I mean, this stuff is nuts. But the problem is, again, everybody thinks it's okay. Nobody wants to ask the questions. See, that's the biggest problem we have in the United States today. I mean, even Albert Einstein would ask many, many years ago, he said, what's the biggest problem with men today? This is back in the 40s and the 50s. He said the problem with people today is they simply don't think. They just believe what they're told. And again, that's all back to the Pavlovian conditioning from the University of Leipzig with their problem action solution that was brought into this country in the late 1800s and taught in the universities and taught in the school system starting in the 1900s. We don't want people to have concrete rational thought and to think through complex activities and the results of these things and what they can do to them individually or as a group. We want them to basically sit down, shut up, and take your drugs. And that's I'm going to say that again. Everybody wants you to sit down, shut up, and take your drugs. And that's where it's going to. We're going to this George Orwellian state in which we're going to have to take drugs that are going to be dispensed to us automatically. And if we don't take the drugs, and if they prove, and we can't, they'll probably track the drugs as they go through our digestive tract. And if we don't take them, they'll show up with the pill police to force you to take your medication. That's where this is going. If they don't kill us all first, it's going to be that nuts. I mean, look what they're doing to the troops that are coming home from the overseas.
Yeah, they consider us animals pretty much, or lower than animals, and
Well, they call us goyim. That's the term they call us goyim, which means basically animals be led to the slaughter. And and the same thing with all of this Kabbalah and all of these witchcraft religions that are running around. I mean, this whole thing is based upon manipulation of the human psychic and the human genetics and the frequency surrounding humans. That's what this whole thing's been based for the eons of time, and that's what they do. Because never forget this. Moses threw his staff down and it turned into a snake. The Egyptians threw their staff down and it turned into a snake too. I mean, don't forget that. I mean, this Kabbalah stuff is real. This witchcraft is real, which is what is the worship of these fallen angels and witchcraft and these serpent gods. And this stuff has been around for thousands and thousands of years from Egypt. And the sad part about it is we got so many people in Hollywood now that are practicing Kabbalah and practicing these mystic old religions like that have nothing to do with Jesus Christ. It's all about worshiping Lucifer, the serpent god. And that's what nobody understands until they start digging into this nonsense and start to realize how unbelievably pervasive all of this stuff is and how it's completely gone through the culture. It's crazy, guys. I mean, you know it's true, but it is what it is. So let me go back to this thing. This is on diabetes again. The number one thing you can take is turmeric. That's that one product that I sent you along with the cinnamon extract. If I can just say this, my blood glucose levels when I did okay. Yeah, I'll be transparent here. I stopped taking my metformin. I hope my doctor's not listening to this, only because I've got to see him here in a couple of weeks. But, no, I shouldn't. It doesn't matter because my blood sugar levels have not been better, I would say, within 18 months. Now, it's not because I've changed radically my diet, Ted. I got to tell you. It's not because of that. So it's got to be because of the cinnamon that I've been taking with my, as instructed, as well as the turmeric. How are you? Have your blood sugar levels dropped now? Are they down now?
They're down significantly, and I'm going to say this: 40%. 40%.
Okay, you've had a 40% drop in blood sugar without taking metformin by changing your diet and taking these supplements.
Yeah, and changing my diet, it's just eliminating, and I was never really big on carbs except for those in the pizza, but just taking away the pizza, basically, and taking the turmeric and cinnamon. Yeah.
See, Doug, this happens we have people that order those products all over the world. And I'm not saying they cure diabetes, but what they do is they help to stabilize blood sugar levels to a more reasonable level. That's what they do, and they do a very, very good job of it. Now, ginger also can do that. It can lower blood glucose. Cinnamon, less than half a teaspoon a day, can reduce blood sugar levels. Olive leaf extract is very, very good as far as lowering blood sugar. Berries lower after-meal insulin spike if you drink berries. Black seed, just 2 grams, reduces insulin resistance with black seed. The problem is if you take it, the liquid black seed, oh gosh, it tastes awful. But it does a good job too. So these are just some of the things I'm covering real quick as far as what you can do. Spirulina can increase insulin sensitivity. Berberin's is also another good product. There's all kinds of natural things that you can do, but what I always tell people is this. Drink half your body weight in fluid ounces in purified water, preferably distilled, per day. So that's 200 pounds. You drink 10 10-ounce glasses of water a day, spread it throughout the day. You take 2 of the cinnamon with each meal, and you also take 1 of the turmeric with each meal. And invariably, within 30 days, doing that, they can go to their doctor, and the doctor will tell them, you no longer need to take these drugs for your diabetes. You're controlling it through your diet. Just snap that quick. And I see that all the time because it's all about what you do and how you put your body in. If you're living on high fructose corn syrup, you're never drinking any water, your blood's going to be too thick, the viscosity will be too high, and you basically stay sick all the time, and you stay tired all the time. The heart's having to pound like crazy trying to pump thick blood through the system, which requires tremendous energy for the heart to use. And so the blood should be more like water and not like syrup, for heaven's sakes. And that's what happens with people. They get this thick blood that's super high in insulin already because the body's not utilizing the insulin in it. It's super high in sugar. It's super high in cholesterol. As they start getting all of these horrible buildup of the inflammatory properties in their arteries, and pretty soon they end up with these systems with the doctors that you got to get your cholesterol down. No, you need to thin your blood out and start taking the right supplements like vitamin E to thin your blood and cod liver oil to thin your blood, and pretty soon the cholesterol stabilizes itself also. I mean, my cholesterol stays around 200 to 230. That's where I want to keep it because any lower than 200, the rates of cancer go through the roof. And basically also testosterone drops through the floor when it goes under 200. And so it's just one of those deals. I like my cholesterol being in between 200 and 250, which used to be considered normal in the United States, but they weren't selling enough drugs. So now they want everybody under 200 so that you can basically have your brain go to mush so you can't think any longer. That's exactly what happens. You start taking all of these Crestor and Lipitor and all these products that also cause cancer, but you can't think on the products. And they're one of the worst. The statin drugs, to me, are the worst drug that's ever been just promulgated to the American population. It's absolutely one of the biggest fiascos they've ever done. And these diabetic drugs like metformin would be number 2, and of course the NSAIDs are number 3. And I give you the other 7 of them in my book, Breakthrough Health. Oh, also, we had such an overwhelming response on the website when I told you guys I was going to give 2 books away for free on the last time. What we decided to do is when they order the Breakthrough Health book, this time it's on the website, so you don't have to call and tell my son. I put my fat loss book, and it's called Maximum Fat Loss. It's like a $30 book, and my Maximum Fat Loss workbook, which is a $20 book. And those $50 worth of books, when you order the $15 Breakthrough Health, we're going to send you both fat loss books for free.
You can't beat that, folks. I have right on my desk, right here, and you can see if this is TV, you could see it, but right here, folks, Breakthrough Health. This book is my nutrition Bible. I got to tell you, it's a fantastic book. If you go to HagmannHagmann.com, click on the picture of the book right in the dead center of the website. It'll take you right to Breakthrough Health by Ted and Sharon Brewer. I got to tell you, it's something that you don't need my endorsement, Ted. You really don't. This book is, and my wife, she just consumed just about every word of that book. My sister-in-law, when she was here, saw it on the table, and she was reading it. I got to tell you, man, it's a great book, and it's well, I don't want to say surprising, but shocking in terms of the information that it's got in there between the covers.
Well, I published that one myself, Doug. And I did it myself because every time I try to go through a publisher, they take everything out of my books. There's certain things, so you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say this. I'm going to say anything I want to say. And I said, I'm just telling the truth. The truth is the truth. And what was funny, I came on your show, I guess it was back in February, and we just released the book. And you guys have a bunch of trolls, I guess, that follow you around, and they give me a bunch of bad reviews on the book. And so hopefully tonight, when you guys are listening, if you've ordered the book and you love the book, go give me a 5-star review on Amazon, because I couldn't believe it. I mean, they're saying these horrible things about the book, and I'm thinking, like, this is ridiculous. Here I am. I tell you the solutions, and I tell you the problems on all these different types of conditions. And so that's why I wrote the book, because I got tired of giving you a bunch of nonsense because of the publishers refusing to allow me to say certain things. And so that's why we decided to do it this way and just run it through Amazon ourselves. I had no idea that, you know, we'd have the satanic trolls running around saying bad things about the truth.
And I'm so sorry for that. You're dragging you into that. And folks, you would do me a personal favor, seriously, if you would, if you have the book, and I'm not asking you to do anything that, you know, anything untoward here. If you've read the book, you like it, certainly give it a 5-star review, because we do have, and we're under assault every single day. Folks, if we could tell you exactly what was going on, you wouldn't believe it. But let me tell you, it's not only just us, but our guests as well. They're under assault, like Ted, of course, in his book. So please give it a favorable review, and that would negate those satanic trolls. Ted, go ahead, sir.
But anyhow, I'm sorry for the shameless plug there as far as Amazon.
It's not shameless, man. No.
Well,
it's not shameless. I'm going to tell you, man.
Well, I got. Go ahead, Doug.
No, you know, it's just it saddens me to see. We've had I'm not going to name the names because it would just bring out more people, but we've had a couple of people on recently, and we've seen the backlash from it. And we could trace the IPs on our website, and looking at this, they're the same people all of the time, and it's just an incredible thing how people just want to tear somebody down, want to attack the messenger, to negate the message. It's vilify, and I understand now, folks. I understand. You hear Steve Quayle come on our program saying this person or that person, you know, is or these groups of people are, you know, really trying to vilify the truth and nullify the truth. It's very true. I don't even understand how he put up with 20-some, 30-some years of radio. So I just want to say, Ted, you're right on the money. And folks, please, I would consider it a personal favor if you did that. But go ahead, sir.
Well, anyhow, so thank you, by guys. And certainly, if you don't like the book, don't say you didn't, that you liked it, that you didn't. But the point is this: I pulled all the plugs on that one. I decided I wasn't going to play any games with it, and I said, okay, here's the problem: this, and this increase energy levels. This, and this don't. These drugs cause all of these horrible side effects. I mean, I list the 10 drugs never to use, and I literally give you 5 or 6 pages of side effects and horrible side effects that are caused by each of these drugs. And basically, I don't tell you not to take them. In fact, I tell you not to come off of them if you are taking them, because your doctor needs to bring you off of them. But the point is, I let you know what the side effects are that you weren't told about when you start taking these drugs. And one of the common side effects on so many of them is cancer. And a lot of these, this heart disease, a lot of these products that lower cholesterol, like Crestor, they also lower coenzyme Q10 in the heart, and they actually cause heart disease. It's the nuttiest thing. You're taking a product because you're supposed to be getting a healthier heart, and you end up getting worse problems with heart disease because you do it. But if you go to healthmasters.com, that's the name of our website, healthmasters.com, or you give us a call at 1-800-726-1834. That's healthmasters.com, and the phone number is 1-800-726-1834. You can get a copy of the book along with the Maximum Fat Loss book. And let me go ahead and start going and talking about how to lose body fat for the holidays and stuff, because I promised everybody I was going to do that, and all these people have probably heard me pontificating for the last hour about all of these other topics. They've been waiting to learn how to burn body fat and cellulite, which we're going to talk about right now. But now you have a network break coming up pretty quick, don't you?
Oh, you know what, we do. I was so entranced by it and enthralled with what you were saying here, because I'm looking to lose some body fat. So, folks, you're out there, you're looking to lose some body fat. Hang with us here. We're going to be right back after these brief messages. Stay with us, folks. You're listening to a very special broadcast here. It is the second day of January 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann, in studio with my son, my fellow investigator, co-host Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Our very special guest, Dr. Ted Broer, has his own little space on our website.
It's Friday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. We are in hour number 2 with our guest, Ted Breuer. His website, healthmasters.com, Body by Ted. Go to our website at hagmannhagmann.com, and you can find all Ted's information right on our website. I got a question from a listener, Ted, before we get into the second hour here with where we're going. Back to nerve regeneration. A listener says his wife suffers from vertigo due to nerve damage from a ear infection, a mild ear infection, and he wanted to know about nerve regeneration in the ears.
Probably the best I've ever read with that is vitamin B12, B as in boy 12, but I can do some more research on it and try to figure out, because a lot of times with the vertigo and also the tinnitus in the ear, you can end up using the vitamin B12, the methylcobalamin, not the cyanide cobalamin, and basically it's supposed to work really, really well for that. But I know this for tinnitus. I'm not sure about the nerve regeneration in the ear, but we can definitely look it up for and find out in a few minutes. I'll do that in the next break. How about
that? Sounds great. That's fabulous. Thank you. Now that we kind of diverted you from the topic, why don't you go ahead? Before the break, you were talking. Well, you were ticking off a list here. So go ahead and continue.
Well, there's so much. I literally have 40 articles sitting here in front of me. We're going to talk about fat loss in just a second. Ibuprofen. I want to mention that one more time. It kills thousands of people each year. I mean, that's nuts. I mean, thousands of people die from this. It just unbelievably, massively increases the risks of heart attacks and heart disease. And so the study here that I'm reading, it says, why are so many people taking the NSAID drugs? This is the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. It says pain and unhealthy levels of inflammation are fast becoming a default bodily states in the industrialized world, while in most cases we can adjust to the underlying pro-inflammatory conditions by altering our diet and reducing stress and environmental chemical exposure. These approaches take time, discipline, and energy, and sometimes we want to stop the pain now, and that's when we reach for the aspirin or for the ibuprofen. Ibuprofen is really an example of this. It's a petrochemical derivative, again, Rockefeller again. It's been linked significantly to increased risks of heart attacks and increased cardiac and all-cause mortality when you combine it with aspirin, with over 24 serious adverse health effects, including anemia, DNA damage, hearing loss, hypertension, influenza mortality, and miscarriage. And so it's just, there's all kinds of natural things. If you're really inflamed, we've got a really good problem. It's called, we have 2 joint products that work really great for your joints. One of them's Atrophin, and the other one's called Joint Rebuilding Formula. And it's phenomenal what it does as far as how it helps to rebuild and restore your joint functions. I use them every single day. And also the omega-3 fats, the cod liver oil, is one of the best things that I can do. If I don't take my omega-3 fats every day, I think like a tablespoon of cod liver oil every day, I can feel it in my joints the following day. But you guys got to remember, I'm like you guys are, like you are, Doug. I'm almost 60 years old, and I mean I've been around for a long time, and I've been training with the weights now for 45 years, and so I have to be real careful when I work out. I just don't use real heavy weight anymore. I do higher reps. The muscles can still do pretty much anything I want them to do. It's the joints can't take it. And so I've got to make sure that I take my supplements every single day, that my joints do great, but I've got to take that cod liver oil every single day. We have an old-fashioned cod liver oil product that does great. We've got another one that has cinnamon in it. It's a fermented cod liver oil. It's a little bit better, but it's a little bit more pricey. And so that's what I do. I take those things every single day, and it really keeps my joints lubricated. But let's go ahead and talk about fat loss now. You know, what's interesting about this is the United States basically is one of the fattest countries in the world. I mean, we've got so many people that are suffering with obesity, to morbid obesity. And the thing about it is, you got to think about this, guys. If you're 100 pounds overweight and you have diabetes, have you ever thought just maybe if you lost that 100 pounds you wouldn't have diabetes anymore? I mean, think about that for a second. I'm sorry. Sometimes I try to simplify things and they come out funny, but that's true, isn't it? If you've got a problem with being short, if you have a shortness of breath when you were 100 pounds overweight, well, maybe if you pull that 100-pound plate off your back and you weren't walking around with it anymore, you wouldn't be short of breath anymore. And that's what people don't get. It's not that difficult to try to figure out what's going on. The difficult arises trying to figure out how to correct it. So what we need to do is realize this. If you want to weigh 180 pounds and you're a guy, multiply that by 10. That's 1,800. That's how many calories you need to eat every single day to maintain your basal metabolic rate, and then not burn a bunch of protein stores. So that's very, very important, because remember, once fat gets burned, if protein and carbohydrates can be converted to fat to be stored in the body, but fat cannot be taken and turned back into protein or into carbohydrates. It has to be burned as fuel, as fat. And so that's what's so weird about everything. Everything can turn to fat, but then fat, you kind of get stuck with it. So the way you're going to burn body fat, and then you get those books when you order that one are going to be free now. It's maximum fat loss. And if you're going to fuss at me because you didn't get those books the last time, you got the cookbook and the memory book. Look at it this way: for $15, you can get another copy of Breakthrough Health, and you get the fat loss books that are supposed to be $50 anyhow. And so it's still a great value. But here's the thing: 6 meals a day is what you need to break your diet down to. So 6 300-calorie meals a day if you want to weigh 180 pounds. With women, if you want to weigh 120 pounds, times it by 10, that's 1,200 calories a day. Divided by 6 is 200 calories 6 times a day. That's how you do this, and you can never go under those calorie intakes because that's going to help maintain your basal metabolic rate. So if you don't lose muscle on the way down. Because if you lose muscle on the way down, for every pound of muscle you lose, you lower your own basal metabolic rate by 50 calories a day. So if you lose 10 pounds of muscle weight, you're going to have to eat literally 500 calories less from that day forward until you rebuild that muscle back, or you'll start gaining body fat back. That's just how insidious that is. That's why you've got to drop the weight very, very slowly. So these are the 5 ways to burn body fat. So number 1 is 6 meals a day based upon your body weight as far as the calories. Now, once you figure out how many calories are 300 or how many calories are 200, you don't have to worry about trying to figure out calorie in the food. You can just see it by portion sizes and just eat throughout the day. Very important that you eat these meals throughout the day. I know people, some of the heaviest people that I know, they say, well, I only eat one meal every single day. I said, okay, what do you eat it? Well, I eat it about an hour before I go to bed. I'm like, well, there's your problem. You don't have a chance to burn any of those calories throughout the day. Plus, you're probably going to have acid reflux anyhow because you're laying down with all that food on your stomach at night because your body's not working right, and you got to build up your metabolic rate by eating the food throughout the day. Now, number 2, you need to avoid what's called high glycemic carbohydrates. So you stay away from bread and pasta and rice and potatoes and foods like that turn to sugar more quickly. A baked potato will convert to sugar, to glucose, more quickly in your bloodstream than table sugar will. I'm going to repeat myself on that. If you're sitting down having a baked potato, and you have a tablespoon of baked potato and you have a tablespoon of sugar. If you eat the baked potato, take a glucose test 30 minutes later, then a couple hours later eat a tablespoon of straight sugar, the baked potato turns to sugar more quickly in the bloodstream than table sugar does as far as glucose. Now, that's interesting, isn't it, Doug? That's called the glycemic index of food. And what that means
I would never have thought.
Well,
carbohydrates.
Yeah, because not all carbohydrates are created equal. Some of them they're really just not good for you, and so what happens is when you eat a lot of high glycemic or carbohydrates that turn to sugar quickly in the blood, it elevates insulin. When you elevate insulin is a storage hormone. And then basically the body takes those extra calories and it stores them as fat. It actually converts them over into it's a complicated process, but it converts them into fat and stores them in the fat cells. And it'll also stick them in the liver a little bit with the sugar and elevate the glycogen levels. You can do that. That's what the track guys will do before they run a marathon. They'll glycogen load the night before with carbohydrates or with pasta. Engorge their livers with all the glycogen, so they have more stamina the next day to run. Now, so that's number 2 on the list. Is you got to stay away from high glycemic carbohydrates. Number 3. Drink half your body weight in fluid ounces in purified water. This is the second time I've said that tonight. It can be either reverse osmosis or distillation. At the Health Masters website, we have distillers there. You can get those. They're like $300 or something like that. They're great units. They're countertop models. They work absolutely amazing for what they do. And I love them. We have one in the office. Makes a gallon of distilled water every 3 hours. Amazing product. And the water tastes great. And the container that goes into it is all BPA free, so don't have to worry about that. And what's interesting about this is the water does a whole bunch of different things. It's a catalyst. It aids in all the cell functions, and it also helps to burn body fat by helping the cells and the body to operate more efficiently. That's very important. Everybody gets that the water is so critical to use on a regular basis. Now, you don't guzzle it before you go to bed at night. You need to sip on it throughout the whole day. I mean, if you come to my house, I'm always walking around with a glass of water, sipping on the glass of water the whole day. It keeps the blood nice and thin. Keeps the joints operating great, keeps your brain working right, and also it helps you to burn body fat. Now, in addition to that, make sure there is no chlorine and no fluoride in the water, because the chlorine and the fluoride are both halogens, And the halogens basically, the body confuses them with iodine, absorbs them into the thyroid gland, and you end up getting problems either hyper or hypo, primarily hypothyroidism from that when you drink chlorine and fluoride in the water. Plus, remember, we talked about on other shows, fluoride will actually calcify the pineal gland, which is one of the things you do not want to do with your pineal gland because it's your third eye. It's your insight into the soul. It's the insight into the unseen dimensions. It's your spiritual organ, basically, that God gave you. And the metaphysicists love to talk about the pineal gland and basically how it calcifies with the use of fluoride. Of course, they knew that when they started putting it in our water, that it would calcify pineal glands and make you not have as much concrete, rational thought and not be able to think through things as clearly as you need to. Now, number 4, there's several supplements that you can take that are really, really important. One of them is going to be the CLA. It has conjugated linoleic acid. It helps to burn body fat. The next one is the cinnamon extract that we talked about, because invariably your body has become insulin desensitized when you gain a lot of body weight, because the fat actually acts as its own organ and starts producing a whole bunch of inflammatory compounds by itself. And so you need to take the cinnamon to help utilize the insulin more effectively and help burn body fat with that. And the final thing that we tell you to do is that we have a product called HGH Stimulate. And what it does, it actually stimulates the pituitary gland to release human growth hormone naturally from the body. Uses citrulline and a few other compounds to do that. And what it does, that helps to also burn and melt body fat and cellulite. So my wife swears I'm now I got rid of her cellulite. And so, but that's the thing that we try to do in the 5 ways to burn body fat. And of course, all of those products are listed at the website, at the healthmasters.com website. But it's a phenomenal way to burn fat and to really increase your energy levels at the same time and get healthier. Because remember, you can't be healthy if you're 100 pounds overweight. I mean, it just sooner or later it's going to cost you. Sooner or later it's going to cost you with diabetes. Sooner or later it's going to cost you with cancer. Sooner or later it's going to cost you with heart disease. Sooner or later it's going to cost you with joint problems. The other day I was doing a show that was so funny in Mississippi. Craziest thing. I mean, it was right up there. It was actually wasn't Mississippi. It was Louisiana. And the guy we were talking on the show. It was a big show. Had zero response. But the reason for that is the demographics, because the people there are not real health conscious. And I remember some guy called up and he was so angry. And he goes, I'm going to eat my pig. If I want to eat my pig, I'm going to have my bacon. I'm going to have my bacon sides. All you want us to do is eat broccoli and algae. And I said to him, I said, dude, I said, really? I said, I already told you beef, eggs, butter, venison are not on my top 10 list of foods never to eat. There's all kinds of natural things you can eat. I mean, go out and eat a steak, for heaven's sakes. But he was just absolutely convinced that he was going to eat pork. And there's a really good article. Everybody wants to pull it up. It's in the Biological Therapy, Volume 1, Number 2, 1983, by Professor Hans Reckwig. It's called The Adverse Influence of Pork Consumption on Health, and he lists like 37 diseases that are transmitted from pigs into humans. So that's one of the things you absolutely have to avoid. He actually calls it a homotoxin, which means you don't ever put it in your body, because we're Homo sapiens and we shouldn't be poisoning ourselves by the food that we eat. And of course, God knew that. That's why he says in the last 2 books of Isaiah, I believe, chapter 65 and 66, that he basically says if you eat rats and pig and other abominable things, you shall meet your end together. And he also tells you in the book of Deuteronomy, if you follow the law and you do what he tells you to do, you're going to live long and prosper. And if you don't, you're not going to live long and prosper. You're going to be stuck with severe, long and lingering illnesses and wasting diseases, which would be cancer, and all kinds of other horrible things if you don't listen to what the Word says. Because, again, he knows about epigenetics. He made us. He knew if we ate certain types of food, it would mess up our DNA and cause all kinds of health problems like cancer. That's why he warned us in the Bible not to eat shellfish and not to eat pork. He wasn't trying to torment us with a pork chop saying, ha, 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 you can't eat this. That wasn't the point, Doug. The point was, I don't want you to die. Don't eat this. I put these things here to eat all the sewage and all the other junk on the earth, that's all these rotten animals and dying things. They're not made for food for you. So don't eat these things, because you're going to get sick and come down with cancer and all of these diseases. But, of course, Satan, he wants you to eat those things. Remember when Jesus was casting the demons out, he actually sent the demons into the herd of swine where they requested to go. Remember, don't send us into the pit, send us into the swine.
That should tell us something. Yeah, absolutely. And I got to tell you, Ted, since the program on December 1st, I have not touched any pork. And I got to say, I used to like a great pork chop or a great pork rib, but I do feel better knowing that I'm not poisoning myself with that kind of food. So, and really, you know what? the steak, you really don't need pork anyway. So.
Well, even a lamb chop. The other day, here's another guy you need to have on your show. This guy's phenomenal. He's a pastor who's completely awake. I mean, that's like an oxymoron, right? His name's Pastor Rodney Howard Brown. And I heard him on Alex Jones a few weeks ago. And I'd heard of him before, back in the 80s and the 90s. He came to the United States in the late 80s from South Africa. He fled that apartheid mess. Well, really, he didn't flee the apartheid. He fled the horrible stuff that happened there. You know, when the communists took over, basically, I guess you could say, and basically came to the United States with like $300 in his wallet. And now he's this internationally known evangelist who's preached up there in Congress and has an open invitation to talk to all these state leaders and everybody else in Congress. And he needs to tell you these stories. And what's interesting about him, I heard him on Alex Jones. He was at a church locally where we attended. I didn't get a chance to hear him there, so I called him up to get him on the show that I'm hosting now on the Power Hour. And what was interesting, we started talking on the show. It's like he believes everything you believe. He believes everything I believe. He knows all about the Federal Reserve System. He knows all about, guns and food storage and all of this stuff. He eats clean. He eats organic. And he's wide awake. He completely knows. The first thing he told me to read the book, The Tower of Basel, which talks about the Bank of International Settlements and how they funded the Nazis in the Nazi war effort through the transference of gold and the resources of the plundered countries for the Nazis through Switzerland. Incredible book. I read through that entire book after he had told me to get that. I ordered it. In fact, he gave me a copy of it because what I did, he's down here in Tampa, and we ended up basically going to his church a couple of weeks ago, and he had 1,100 people come forward to get saved in one Sunday.
That's amazing.
I saw
really?
it. I was there on the front row. We all had to slide our chairs back because there wasn't enough room for all the people that came forward. They were on the platform. They were in the front of the church. 1,100 people got saved in one day, and what he does, he has a ministry to the inner cities of Tampa, the smaller, all the little things all around Tampa, and he has a bus ministry that goes out and actually picks up on the highways and the byways this inner city population that basically would never ever even get to church because they have no transportation, and he brings them in every single Sunday, and he teaches them basically how to eat right, how to think right, how to act right, how to be a Christian. 1,100 people got saved in one day, and he said there's been a massive decrease now in the crime in Tampa. And they don't know why. But of course, he says he knows why, since he started doing that and witnessing to the inner city. So his name is Pastor Rodney Howard Brown. And if you guys can get him on, that would be absolutely wonderful. You would absolutely love this guy. He's just a bundle of energy. And he walks the walk and talks the talk. And so the reason I was thinking about him is you were talking about pork chops. The other day when we went to church, he said we asked him if we could take him out to lunch, and he goes, no, he goes, I tell you what they're going to do. He goes, but the staff's going to cook an organic meal for us after church.
Wow.
And I only eat organic. And I'm like, wow, okay. And so we sat there and we had lamb chops. Speaking of pork chops, we had lamb chops, and they were probably the best lamb chops I've ever eaten in my entire life. So all the food was delicious. Same thing when you eat at my house here in Florida. The food is delicious. I mean, people always come here and they go, well, we didn't think you'd be healthy. Or they're not healthy. We didn't think you'd eat healthy. Or eating healthy wouldn't taste this good. The reality is eating healthy can taste amazing if you just prepare the food the correct way. And so that's why I was saying that there's no reason to fall in love with pork at all, because pork is just another toxic product that the globalists are giving us, and they're feeding their GMO corn to it. So don't put it in your bodies. And I know baby back ribs taste great. I'm not even going to argue with you about that, okay? I know they taste great. I mean, I can tell you this, quite frankly, I love baby back ribs. I just don't eat them. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Ever since I learned about how bad pork is, like 30 years ago now, I just don't do it. But when that happened to me back in '83 when I almost died with the heart disease, that was when I changed all this stuff. I mean, that was like 32, 33 years ago now. I decided I wasn't going to eat those kind of foods anymore, and I just don't do it. I have never knowingly put pork in my body from that point forward. I won't do it. Now, I've been putting recipes before when I wasn't aware of it, and I found out later. But I won't put a homotoxin in my body. I won't put a product in my body that the book of Isaiah, chapter 65 and 66, tells you that God says that these are like rats and pigs and other abominable things, and their pots hold the broth of unclean meat, and they got God so mad. He goes, such people are a stench in my nostril and a fire that keeps burning all day. He goes, I will pay it back unto them. And that's what it says in the book of Isaiah. Read it, the last two chapters of Isaiah. So if God feels that strongly about pork and not eating it, why should we argue with God? We're just going to find ourselves kicking against the goad, going against the Word of God, and not realizing that there was a reason He gave us these natural health tidbits that He gave us about pork and shellfish and not to eat them. And now we all know how contaminated the shellfish industry has become in the Gulf of Mexico from all the core exit. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Ted, I've had some dialogue with someone who lives on the Gulf Coast, who used to make their living by what do you call that? Clamming, I guess, or bringing up shellfish. The stuff that I was told about the shellfish down there, with respect to core eggs, it just made me ill. I mean, it's incredible, and the information is out there, folks. You can find it. So, yeah, I just. Wow, it's really incredible. And ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Dr. Ted Brower, healthmasters.com. Please visit his website. Please look. If you do nothing else, get his book, Breakthrough Health. And what a great special he's got with that as well. But I'm going to tell you, look, we're going into 2015. We preach spiritual and mental preparation. What about the physical preparation? And it's all, once you have your physical taken care of, your mental acuity improves, everything improves. So let's be healthy as we prepare to engage whatever's coming down the pike. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, several weeks ago, you're talking about that. My son, he's really into this working out stuff like I am. My 26-year-old, my 16-year-old, he's almost 16 now, the one who's already in college. He basically, by the way, he did get a 4.0. He got all his grades in for last semester. And what was interesting is about a month and a half ago, Austin called me up and he says, "Hey, Dad, I'm going down to a tactical training class on Sunday. Can you miss church for one Sunday and take this tactical training class?" Because I've taken him with him before. And he does his handgun, rifle, shotgun training, that kind of stuff. And I'm down there, and Austin's running body armor because he always says, "I'm going to train the way that I'm preparing." He's running full plates, and but I told him I'm not going to do all that because whatever. If it gets to the point we have to have full plates, we're all kind of done anyhow. And so I told him, I said, "But I will go down there with you." So it was shotgun and handguns. We were running around, rolling underneath cars, shooting under the cars, shooting through. This is all live. This is all live fire stuff. Okay, this isn't. We're not using paintball. And so we've got these instructors right with us the whole time. And I'm thinking to myself, here I am, 59 years old. I'm squatting down, shooting under cars, shooting through targets, shooting around targets, shooting over hoods, crawling around, shooting stuff. I thought to myself, what would I do if I wasn't in shape right now? How would I do this?
Good point. Yeah, you wouldn't be doing it.
You can't.
Really?
No, you can't. You can't. You think about it for a second, guys. If you're listening to me, well, I'm all prepared. What happens if you can't bend over? What happens if you can't get on your knees? What happens if you can't duck? What if you can't climb a wall? What are you going to do? Are you just going to go point me to take the first shot? What are you planning on doing? Why would you let yourself get into such a situation where you're so out of shape that you can't, crawl for a few feet or move quickly enough to get behind the car to take cover, to avoid cover fire? And I hope and pray that this never happens. Okay, but all I know is this. If you don't train to be prepared, you're never going to be prepared if something happens. Or you think you're just going to this stuff's going to transfer to you osmotically, and you're going to learn how to do all of this stuff? It's the craziest thing. I've got all these friends that are, quote, preppers. They don't even know how to fire weapons. They don't even know how to use a gun. And I'm like, guys, this is something you might want to learn before you have to know it. Are you serious? And then there was some old guy there, bless his heart. I was happy he was there, but he kept muzzle sweeping everybody with his 12 gauge. And I don't know if you've ever been in a live fire exercise, Doug, but muzzle sweeping's not cool. And that means he's pointing his 12 gauge. That means he was pointing his 12 gauge shotgun at people. Barrel, with his finger on the trigger. Whether it was loaded or not doesn't make any difference, because when you're in a live fire exercise like that, and even if you're not in a live fire exercise, you have to assume that every gun that you pick up or you look at is loaded and is chambered and it's ready to go. You have to assume
Absolutely.
that. And so finally, after about the third time I complained about him, they asked the guy to leave. They said, "Look, dude, you've muzzle swept everybody here like 3 times. You got to go." And I told the instructor, I said, "What took you 3 times?" I said, "The second time he should have been shut out the door." And I'm right. You know how dangerous it is. And I've got all my friends. Yeah. But you don't muzzle sweep people with guns or handguns. You can't do that and have any kind of safety. And you can't do that. But the reason I'm saying that is we've got a program called Eat, Drink, and Be Healthy on the website, bodybyted.com, along with the HGH Stimulate. Guys, if you're over 50 and you're listening to me, I'm 59 years old. You can go see a photo of me. I practice what I preach. I can get you in really, really good shape within about 6 to 8 weeks, unless you've got to lose 100 pounds. Then it's going to take about 6 months. But the point is, like Doug said earlier, if you're taking 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 prescription drugs right now, what are you going to do if you can't get those anymore? What are you going to do if you haven't changed your diet and you haven't changed your lifestyle, and now suddenly something happens and you no longer have the availability of these drugs? Are you thinking it's just going to be okay? It's not going to be okay. You know, we're going to have people dying within weeks because of a lack of medication, Doug, especially insulin, especially with especially with the juvenile diabetes, because they have to have insulin. So this is going to be a big mess if it happens.
Oh, no doubt, and I do expect supply disruptions. I do expect that. You know what, Ted? It was Christmas Eve, last week or whenever it was. My wife sent me to the grocery store. She had forgotten a couple of things, so I went down for her. It struck me then, and I'll just say it. Everyone there, you were talking about like going underneath cars and stuff like that. I did not see one person in that grocery store that could fit underneath a car. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything like that. What's going on? I mean, the obesity of the American populace is something I've never, I remember 40 years ago, well, I guess I just gave away my age, but I mean, 40 years ago, what? You didn't see that level of obesity. I'm talking about morbidly obese people that could barely walk. No,
and they'll be the first victims of this when it happens, because it's like John Moore said one time. I was talking to him, and he said, Ted, he goes, most people can't walk 10 miles, much less 50 miles. He said, if you're 50 miles away from a major metropolitan area, you should be okay, as long as you're not completely, isolated. You've got some friends with you if something happens. He goes, because people, if we did have an EMP, because we've all read 1 second after, if something like that did happen and the cars quit running, they can't walk 50 miles. They can't do it and not die. I mean, there's a really good trail if anybody wants to do it. It's called the Mount LeConte Trail, using the Alum Cave Bluff entrance in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. It's like 5.5 miles up to the summit, and it's pretty steep, and 5.5 miles back down. It takes a full day to walk up and back if you take your time. And what the crazy thing about it is, we do that just for recreation. I mean, we enjoy that. And, and the kids all do it with. I mean, my 12-year-old, I had my kids, the first time we went up there with all the kids and spent the night up at the lodge up there at the top, LeConte Lodge. I think the kids were like 6, 8, and 12, and 10. And I mean, so I got a 6-year-old hiking 11 miles.
That's great.
Well,
that's great. I used to, you know what? I used to joke around. Now I don't run because of my joints and spinal issues and stuff like that. But I used to joke that, if anyone ever saw me running, you better keep up or join me, because something really bad is happening behind me. But I got to tell you, walking has really changed my life too. I mean, getting out and moving around, you've got to move your muscles, your body. I mean, it's so important. Hiking, if that's what you want to do, absolutely. But man, again, I just implore the listeners out there, we know bad things are coming down the pike, so please take what Ted Broer is talking about, take it to heart. Please, let's change so we can all move to the other side, or get through what's coming, and celebrate on the other side that we made it. This is so important. Go ahead, sir.
Well, yes, that's true. But you were saying the major. And always remember, my second undergraduate degree from Florida State is in psychology with a minor in exercise physiology. I took one of my favorite classes in college was a class called electromyographic kinesiology, in which we actually measured muscle potentials and electrical stimuli in the muscles and what they did to the muscles. I mean, I can tell you all about that. I got to do a whole show on that if you wanted to do it. But the whole thing about it is that I know my physiology. I know my exercise. We've even got DVDs that are exercise videos. If you want to have some really good workouts, I've got beginning, intermediate, and advanced men. They're on my website for both men and women. 2 separate, 6 different videos, and I take women and men through working out, and you get to do it with me. And I'm going to make sure you don't get hurt. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do and what not to do. I mean, that's why, my son Austin, he loves working out now. He's 26 years old. And he told me one time, he says, look, Dad, he goes, here's the deal. He goes, I train with my body armor because if I got to wear it, I got to be able to carry it. And he goes, and I've got to be able to go over a wall if I have to, wearing the body armor. And I said, well, that's true. I said, I don't now, quite frankly, I don't think I could go over an 8-foot wall right now without a ladder wearing body armor. But the point is, it's what it is. I mean, it's just basically you've got to prepare and have that mental mindset. And see, the biggest problem we have right now is the high fructose corn syrup. It's in everything, Doug, and it's one of the primary causes of diabetes. It's one of the primary causes of insulin resistance. It's one of the primary causes of obesity, and it's in everything. Regular table sugar is awful for you, but it's a lot better for you than high fructose corn syrup. Now, a good alternative is coconut sugar. We use coconut sugar for things if we want to sweeten them that don't taste right with stevia, because some things just don't taste good with stevia. And we use a lot of stevia. Stevia, it's lemonade. Remember, we talked about that one show, I think it was the last show we were talking about the diabetes, and I used 1 ounce of fresh lemon juice with 9 ounces of water, and you sweeten it with stevia, and it makes the best tasting lemonade you've ever had, and it's actually healthy for you, and it actually helps to stabilize your blood sugar. But again, call my office up. I think Austin's down there. Tell Austin I told you to call him. It's a 1-800-726-1834, 1-800-726-1834. And if you want to talk to him about working out, the guy's got 18-inch arms. I mean, he's got a 50-inch chest. I mean, he looks amazing. He's got a 32-inch waist. He's 26 years old. I'll have to send you some pictures of him, Doug. The guy, he's amazing at what he looks like, and he trains and he works out hard, and he's wide awake. I mean, none of my kids are asleep. All of my kids are awake. Everybody knows what's going on because they've got to listen to me talk about it all the time, and now Sharon's talking about it all the time, and so the kids all know. And we basically train them so they understand that they're not going to be asleep and pretend like they can drink fluoride and calcify their pineal glands, and that's okay because it's not okay. And but that's the whole thing is the high fructose corn syrup and the starch and the sugar and the chemicals and all the thing and all the food. And the older I get, the cleaner I eat. It's the weirdest thing, Doug, because when I used to, I cut myself a little bit of slack when I was younger in my 20s and 30s with Sharon when we first got married. But I've learned something. It's like with that cod liver oil I was telling you about with my joints. If I want to be able to roll around under a car and shoot underneath a car and shoot underneath targets and do all the stuff and climb ladders and do all the stuff that I do now at the age of almost 60, I've got to take my cod liver oil every day. And if I don't, my joints start aching on me, which is awful, but they do. Now, another thing that works really well to increase energy levels, and I take it every single day, and I haven't had any coffee tonight. I haven't even had any green tea extracts tonight because I want to sleep tonight. This is just my normal energy levels, is I take beet powder, B-E-E-T, beet powder extract every single day. And what that does to help to re-energize the liver and clean out the liver and give you tremendous energy is beyond belief what beet powder extract will do. I use 2 scoops of that every single day, and oh my goodness, you're talking about the first couple of days you're taking that stuff, you get so geeked up. Well, the first couple of days you may feel kind of funky because you're cleaning your liver out, but after like the 3rd or 4th day, you start feeling really, really good on that. And that's what I take that every single day in my protein shake for breakfast. And I tell you what, guys, I mean, I feel great. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm not dousing caffeine. I got water here in front of me, and this is just my normal energy levels. Now in the morning when I get up to host that show that I've been doing because it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, I will use a couple of the purple sticks, which is a green tea extract. Because I don't like drinking coffee because coffee makes me feel really good the first day I drink it. The next day I feel okay. By the 3rd day, my adrenals are so shot and I feel so awful and my sleep pattern is so messed up that I feel terrible. And so I stay off the coffee. Every once in a while I'll have a cup, but it's just not something I love coffee. Don't get me wrong. I love the way coffee tastes. I love the way coffee smells, especially early in the morning. But I just don't drink it because I don't like the way coffee makes me feel after a couple of days. And the green tea extract, the purple sticks that we use that are on the website also, those things are amazing because they boot you up in the morning, give you a really good workout, wake you up in just a few minutes, and they don't cause any cortisol elevation, which we talked about at length in the last show that I was on with you. And that cortisol is that stress hormone that causes muscle wasting, makes you gain body fat, makes you age very, very quickly. And so you got to avoid cortisol as much as you possibly can. And so that's a stress hormone that we talk about too, is that the stress hormone cortisol basically shuts down your digestive process. When it does that, you get a massive decrease in nutrient absorption, which massively increases the risks of cancer. So if you have bitterness or unforgiveness in towards someone, you need to forgive them. Because I promise you that bitterness and unforgiveness towards that person is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt them. They're going to forget all about you after a while anyhow, because most people don't remember anybody anyhow, and you're still going to be mad about something they did 20 years ago, and you're going to allow that bitterness to eat you up in the inside, and you're going to end up getting cancer from it because of the lack of nutrient absorption. So the best way to forgive somebody is to pray for them. And I used to find that very difficult to do until I started learning the truth. We know it's hard until I started learning the truth about what cortisol does to me. And when I started realizing that, and that's why the Bible said a merry heart does good like a medicine. So now when Florida State got stomped last night, I laughed and went to bed. I thought, I'm not going to stress out over my football team. What difference does it make? We were in the Final Four. Oh, well, we did great. We were national champions last year. Who cares? I'm not going to sit around and lament this. I have friends of mine that were wailing and crying last night. And I'm like, what's wrong with you people? It's a football game. And see, the thing about it is, I had a pastor about a year and a half ago really did me wrong. If I told you what he did, guys, you wouldn't even believe me. And he did me. He did me wrong. I mean, just ridiculous. And so I left the church. And so what happened is, it was bothering me. So I told Sharon, I said, I'm really irritated at such and such, pastor. And I said, I know what to do. So every morning now, he leads off my prayer by praying. Every morning when we pray out loud together as a family, I'm praying for Pastor so-and-so, ask God to bless him. And now I'm like, I feel sorry for him. But I have no more bitterness towards him because I pray for him to be blessed every day. If you'll do that, what does the Bible say? Pray for those who diligently use you, who persecute you, who basically cause you stress. I mean, the Bible says that if you're nice to people that are nice to you, what difference does that make? Even the heathen can do that. But we've got to learn as Christians that we have to be a step above that. We have to pray for those who diligently use us or despite us or say bad things about us or do us wrong. And see, if you can learn that as a human being, as a Christian, towards people who don't like you and you pray for them, I tell you what, guys, it'll change your life. It may not change their life, but it'll change your life, and you'll walk in love and forgiveness, and you'll live long. And these guys are going to be long dead and gone with some horrible disease because of their bitterness and their home and their personalities, and you're going to be doing great thinking, I wish so-and-so could have lived a little bit longer. I'd like to have prayed for him a little bit longer. And the sad part about it is, am I right or wrong, guys?
No, you're right, and I was going to ask you a follow-up here about the not only the unforgiveness, and it does take a while. It's not something that comes naturally when somebody does something wrong to you to want to forgive them. But when we can in our own mind increase our own stress to the point that it makes us sick, and the bitterness, unforgiveness, anger, and anxiety, and not fear really can be manipulated, and those emotions I've seen it in people who dwell on those to the point that they get physically sick in different ways. How much can we make ourselves sick by having that type of mindset?
Oh, no, it's deadly. I mean, especially with arthritis and cancer. I mean, I've seen people crippled up and wadded up into knots in wheelchairs because they got mad at somebody 20 years earlier, and all they do was cuss them every day. And the more they cuss them, the sicker they got. Pretty soon their bodies are tied up in a knot and contortions, and nobody wants to be around them. It's like my friend Zig Ziglar used to say, they brighten up a room by leaving it, and nobody wants to be around them because all they're going to do is talk about so-and-so who did them wrong. And see, the only reason I even mentioned that tonight on the show, because I won't mention any names, is because I want people to realize that we all have to deal with this kind of stuff on an ongoing basis. But see, we have to walk in love. That's what Jesus told us. That's the most important thing is we love one another. And if we're not willing to do that, and to see the funny thing with Christians it's interesting. And I never told you this story, and I want to tell you this story. Now, this is another interesting story, a little bit more my background. My mom immigrated from Germany in 1952, from post-World War II Nazi Germany. My father was born in the United States here in 1901, so he'd be 15 years old now. And what's interesting is that's one of the reasons that I'm so old-fashioned in my values, because my mom was born in like 1915, my dad was born in 1901. And what was interesting is this. People don't realize is that when my dad went back to Germany, because he was born here, went back to Germany, met my mom, brought her back over here, they got married. He was 54 when I was born, and what happened is my mom couldn't get past the trauma of World War II. If people think that World War II was a cakewalk for the Germans who didn't like Hitler, they're wrong. It wasn't a cakewalk for anybody. It was absolutely awful. And what happened is this. My mom had a real bad problem with drinking. And after my sister and I were born, she started drinking again, which just completely couldn't. My dad couldn't believe it because he was a Quaker. This is real personal stuff now I'm telling you. So they ended up getting divorced. Well, my mom ended up opening a bar on this fish camp my dad had bought. After my dad had left, it was like a German beer tavern. And I saw horrible things happen in there when I was a kid with just crazy people who got drunk. And finally, after about 40, 50 years of owning this place and being on this property and all that, my mom was sitting there one day, and she was kind of staring at the wall, smoking her cigarette. And I was talking to her in the mid-afternoon when there was nobody in there for a few moments. I would always try to stop by and say hi to her. She was like 80-something years old, 80. I think she was 80, 84, 85, still working, 60 hours a week. And I was in there talking to her, and she was smoking her cigarette, staring at the wall, and she's all crippled up with arthritis. I mean, bless her heart, her health is a wreck. And she looked at me, she goes, "I hate people." And I looked at her and I said, "That's a terrible expression, Mom." I said, "Why do you say stuff like that?" She goes, "Well, because of what I've had to do and what I've had to deal with, working in this bar." And I looked at her and I said, "Mom, working in the bar was your choice. You didn't have to do this. You could have sold the property. You could have done a lot of other things. This is what you chose to do after you and Dad got divorced." And I said, "It's one of those things. It's like bad-mouthing Dad now when Dad's been dead and gone. God, may he rest in peace. He's a great guy." But she was always mad about stuff, always angry and bitterness all the time. And it was so funny. I was talking to a nationally known pastor. I'll tell you in private who the guy's name is. You would know who he was immediately. He's been the president of multiple Christian colleges. And I told him that story one time, how my mom had said that she hates people. And everybody listened to me. You know what he said? He goes, "Ted," he goes, "the people that she had to deal with in that bar, in a lot of cases, are better people to deal with than the people in the churches." She goes, "If she really wants to learn how to have to deal with nightmarish people, she'd have to go with some of the churches sometime with a religious bunch." And I thought about what he said, because then he started laughing. I said, "Are you serious?" He goes, "Yes, I am." And I started thinking about it, and I thought, wait a minute, that's true. Christians like to kill their own wounded. If somebody makes a mistake, we like to immediately eviscerate them and basically throw them under the bus. I don't do that, but a lot of Christians do that. And we want to be angry all the time because the Methodists don't like the Presbyterians don't like the Lutherans don't like the Baptists, and nobody likes the Jehovah's Witness, and it goes on and on and on and on. And so that's the whole thing that we do. Not that I'm saying Jehovah's Witnesses are Christian, because they're not. But the point is this: what happens is we start to realize after a point in time that the bitterness that's among Christians needs to be addressed by the Christian community, and we need to realize that if we're just playing games here about learning how to walk in love and how to respect one another, then why are we even bothering to call ourselves Christians if we can't separate ourselves from the values and the attitudes and the actions of the world? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And, the way the Lord works is you read your Bible, you pray, He will change you in the way He needs you to. And we see so many people that, unfortunately today, we see it in the food industry. Everybody wants instant results for whatever effort they put in, and due to the lack of discipline, a lot of people will take the easy way out, whether it's in what they eat and their lifestyle, and this has consequences that people don't think are going to happen to them. They always feel they're the exception to the rule. And unfortunately, by trying to go our own way and follow our own, what we think is best for ourselves, that's when we put ourselves in the most trouble.
Well, you're absolutely right. See, we have the right to determine the course of our actions, but somebody else, including God, will always determine the consequences of those actions. I mean, the consequences have every action has a consequence. For a perfect example, if you say, "I don't believe in the law of gravity," and you step off a 10-story building, and as you're flying for a few seconds before you hit the ground, before you have a really, really negative experience, you're going to realize very quickly you got to choose to step off that building. You didn't get to choose the consequences. Those were predetermined. And see, and that's the same thing that happens with our health. We don't realize until sometimes it's too late that the consequences of our behavior, the consequences of our diet, the consequences of our lack of exercise, basically is going to have consequences. And God forbid that we end up having some horrible apocalyptic scenario in the United States with a 1 second after or whatever happens, which it seems like it's heading that way, and we end up having to deal with consequences of being 100 pounds or 200 pounds overweight, and we have to eat our 10,000 calories a day because we think that's normal, and it's not, to try to maintain all that body fat. And the sad part about it is what are you going to do, and how are you going to deal with that when you can't get up to get out of your house or whatever to try to defend yourself? I mean, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, you think it's going to be okay? And see, and that's the biggest problem. A few years ago, I wrote an email, and the email was, should Christians and Americans store food? You can still read it on my website. And what I said was this. I said human beings basically have certain needs that are physical, needs that are emotional, spiritual, all the other things. Maslow called them the hierarchy of needs, Maslow. And what was interesting about this is that I told people in this email, I said, if you're a leader and you tell people not to store food and something bad happens, shame on you. If you're a leader and you tell somebody to store food and nothing happens and you got 20-year shelf life food at 20 years, just donate it to a food bank, let them use it and eat it, and you can buy another load of 20-year shelf life food. Over 1 million Germans died in World War II after the war was over with from starvation and basically lack of shelter because of the freezing winters. 1 million Germans died. A lot of them were my relatives. I mean, they just died. They starved to death and froze to death. And the Allies knew that was going on. They really didn't care. I mean, I'm not going to get into it and that kind of stuff. But that's what happened. And so the sad part about it,
11 million died of famine shortly after, and there's multiple examples like this.
Well, that's right. And look what Stalin did. Look at the tens of millions of Stalin murdered. Tens of millions. I mean, Hitler was bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to paint some kind of pretty picture about Adolf Hitler. He was a nut there about 1938 on. But the point was, I mean, Stalin made Hitler look like he was chump change. Stalin was unbelievable. And Lenin and those boys, are you kidding me? I mean, that Soviet Revolution and what happened and all those tens of millions who were killed and murdered, I mean, these guys were shooting their own officers in World War I and World War II. I mean, this thing was nuts. And the craziest thing is that we don't think about all of that, but bad things happen to good people. And the United States thinks that it's okay to run up hundreds of trillions of dollars in debt. When you look at unfunded derivatives, what you're looking at 1.4 quadrillion is the number, some 1,400 trillions. And with no hope of ever repaying any of this, it cannot be paid back mathematically, and we think that's okay. And now the employer mandate kicks in with Obamacare this year. Everybody's going to start having their IRS refund checks taken away from them if they don't have Obamacare, and all of their health premiums are going to start going through the roof. And we just sit here as the sheeple thinking this is okay. It's not okay. The problem is, we've allowed all this junk to go through now, so what are we going to do to correct all of this stuff? I mean, if we think Congress is going to correct anything, we're whistling in the cemetery. I mean, unless we have a clean sweep and we get these people out of there. I mean, or unless the military does some kind of coup, which I hope doesn't happen, unless it's a bloodless coup, because the reality is, I mean, somebody's got to take control again of what's going on in the United States, and somebody who's a libertarian or somebody who believes the truth of what the Word of God says and wants to restore us back to the Christian values that the Constitution was based on. And I don't know if I doubt have any of your listeners actually disagreeing with me on any of this stuff. But the point is, we have to ask ourselves this as we're talking about health tonight. If we know that this stuff is coming down the road, what are we waiting for to change what we're doing as far as our health? If we're 40, 50, 60, 100 pounds, 200 pounds, 300 pounds overweight, how bad does it have to get before you start making healthier choices? I mean, that's what we do. That's why we put together the Eat, Drink, and Be Healthy program, because what it does, it teaches you how to take systematic, steps on changing your diet and your lifestyle choices. And now that's become even more imperative now than it ever has before, because the truth is we have to start making these choices immediately, because I'm like you guys are. I think the fall of this year, I mean, we're talking like 10, 12 months from now, something really catastrophic could happen, if not in 2015, 2016. And, I mean, It's all those financial indicators are pointing that way, especially with crude oil prices dropping off and all of these commodity prices dropping. I mean, we don't know if we're going to have another repeat of 2007, 2008 on steroids being much worse than it was in 2008. To use that as a catalyst or a black flag, a false flag event to bring in martial law, or to bring in a one world government. And I mean, everybody seems to think, well, no, it's true. So I mean, so you might have a year left to try to get your health in shape, to go to talk to your doctor to get off your prescription drugs. You may have a year to do that now. So why don't you go ahead and make that a New Year's resolution on January the 2nd, 2015, that you don't want to live like this anymore, and you want to have tremendous energy, and you want to feel good. And if you go take a tactical training class, you want to be able to roll around and shoot under a car or crawl through a car or shoot through targets and not have to pass out because you can't breathe. I mean, you gotta think, everybody's got to think through this. And no, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, just being the truthful guy here.
Right. And the critics would, say that, it's one thing, the fear-mongering, they say, and profiting off selling doom for the survival. But, people have to understand, and you said something, Ted, about helping, when you have the food and you're storing it and you don't use it, that food can be given to homeless people. It can be given to people who are less fortunate.
That's right.
But what happens is people in our human nature tend to turn to their what they store up as their hope, to what's going to get them out of their trouble, instead of relying on the Lord for their life and the food for their provision. They look at it as this is what's going to save me. Right. I mean, and it's all a matter of your faith and are you actually walking the walk as well as talking the talk.
Well, I just want to say this. On your email, and folks, go to healthmasters.com, and on the top there you'll see, should Americans store food? We get accused of fear porn, doom porn, profiting from fear, which I don't know how we do that, but that's, what we get accused of, okay? 3/4 of the way down or halfway down your email, you write here now, or thus now to the topic of food storage, so I think it's a good idea. And then you write, yes, I do, but only from a reality point of view, not fear. What a great sentence that is. Because, we all have to face the truth, the reality, and of course, it's not done from a position of fear. It's not. It's done from a position simply of reality. And I think that those people who say, it's out of fear or selling fear porn, doom porn, whatever that is, I really think that they've got problems with their own faith as opposed to the reality of
the Great Depression. Talk to the people that went through famines and their like you said, Ted, your family perished due to lack of food. It's something that is practical and it's something that is common sense. But what they have done is been able to shift the perceptions and the motives behind this and demonize people who are beings using their common sense and thinking, what they might need in case of an emergency. But there are people out there who won't take that step due to the demonization that has been brought in, just because they worry about what other people will say or think about them.
Well, I know a pastor one time, he would get from the pulpit and he'd tell everybody that Elijah was fed by the widow woman. Now, this is going to make some people mad right now, but go ahead and let them get mad. So I'm going to tell you what he said. And he was saying basically that we should not store provisions for ourselves because Elijah and the women wouldn't, that God's going to take care of us and supply all of our needs. And I said, okay, well, in the meantime, in that day when Elijah was being fed by the widow woman, there were people all around dying of mass starvation, okay? Now, what's interesting about that, when Joseph was in Egypt, he was told to store provisions for 7 years of plenty, for 7 years of famine. And so, God told Joseph to do that. And now what I find interesting is this same pastor said we need to walk by faith and not by fear. Then I find out he has $4 million in the bank account of the church budget, in the bank, sitting there. $4 million. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not exaggerating. He had $4 million in his account. I was told by one of the folks on the board. And I thought, how unbelievably the hypocrisy knows no bounds with this guy. Bless his heart. He's telling people not to store food, but he stores $4 million in case if there's some kind of economic calamity. That's talking out of both sides of your mouth. If you're going to believe that, which if you want to believe that, you can. I have no problem with you believing that, then every month that money in that ministry should be used as a conduit to feed the poor and to help the homeless and to do things around the nation. Every month the money should be gone, and every month you should have the Holy Spirit or the people feeding you from the church make sure that all the tithes are being put into the storehouse, and so the church has all of its budgetary needs met. But why would you tell somebody when you have $4 million in the bank not to store per week's supply of food? Does that make sense to you guys?
No. It's no. It's not rational.
When you have Rodney come on, he'll tell you this, Rodney Howard Brown, because he told me this the other night. And see, I was in the faith church for years and years and years, okay? And I believe a lot of that's very valid information, okay? But then I saw a lot of stuff behind the scenes, so to speak, working with some of the major ministries on TV, that if you knew what I know, you would probably never send another penny to a TV preacher. And I'm not going to name names, okay? But I've been around most of them, and I've helped them raise a lot of different money, a lot of different funds, and I've seen a lot of things that you don't want to know about. Just what I can say to you very clearly and very succinctly is if you go to a local church, support that local church with your tithes and offerings. If they're a good church and they basically have their books open and you know where the money's going and everything else, and you know they're a good steward. But the point is, I mean, I've seen some crazy things in the faith movement, and Rodney told me, he said this, because he was part of that movement too, he's out of that now too, he says, Ted, he goes, the majority of the guys in that faith movement have a fear-based mindset. And he said, that's the problem with it. And he says, and every time something happens, if you pray for somebody and that person doesn't get healed, it's that person's fault because they didn't have enough faith. If a person, dies of cancer, it's the person's fault who dies of the cancer because they didn't have enough faith. If a person has a child that dies, it's the parent's fault because they didn't have enough faith for that child not to die. The whole thing's ridiculous. And so when you look at when you examine it like that, you see a lot of stuff that's being done in that movement that's not of God either. I mean, I got good news for you, and I got bad news for you. A lot of people live a long time. A lot of people don't live a long time. A lot of people make bad choices. They die young. A lot of people make good choices. They live a long time. A lot of people make good choices. They take care of themselves. They get hit by a bus. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. So the reality is this. You can't be blaming people for other people's misfortunes because of their lack of faith. That's nonsense. Okay? And so we can't put ourselves into that kind of guilt trip. Oh, it's my fault so-and-so died because I didn't pray hard enough. Nonsense. But so-and-so died because they took metformin and they ended up with pancreatic cancer because they believed the pharmaceutical lie from big government and big business that this was going to help them with their diabetes, and it killed them. That's why they died, not because you didn't have enough faith or they didn't have enough faith. And see, that's the problem people run into, Doug. They're always trying to blame shift in that faith community as to why things happen to people because it's from a lack of faith, and it's not. Because people are being poisoned in the United States right now by criminals in the United States government and the United States corporations that have only one interest in their mind, and that's eugenics. That's to poison the population and make as much money as they possibly can in the process of poisoning the population. And that's what they do. And the sad part about it is we as Christians, we should know what's going on, and we should realize that there's faith, there's foolishness, and there's presumption. And you can't be assuming things or presuming things that simply aren't true. If a person dies of a heart attack because they're 300 pounds overweight, and you go, oh, he didn't have enough faith, he died of a heart attack. No, he didn't have enough. He died of a heart attack because he ate like a pig for 30 years and he gained 300 pounds overweight, and his arteries were all plugged. That had nothing to do with his faith. He should have been more disciplined in his mindset. And see, in the book of James, it talks about. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And Ted, if you want to hold that thought, we're late for the break.
Another break. I know. Okay.
And we'll take that break now, and we will regroup here in a few minutes on the other side. You're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report with our guest, Mr. Ted Broer. His website, Body by Ted, healthmasters.com. Go to hagmanandhagmann.com, and you can find his information.
Ladies and gentlemen, hour number 3 of the second day of January 2015 edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio with my son, fellow investigator, researcher Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. So thankful that you have joined us, and we are super blessed to have on with us Ted Broer, healthmasters.com. Folks, go there. Definitely grab a hold of his book, Breakthrough Health. I'm going to tell you something. What's between the covers of that book will change the way you look at, a lot of things, and hopefully change the way you live your life in terms of nutrition, your just everything. I mean, it's really a lifestyle change. The information there is invaluable. I mean, it's just tremendous. And I'll say this, and I don't say this lightly. he has changed my life in a very positive way. Ted has, through his advice, the book that he's written, his products. I'm a believer in this, and hopefully I can earn the instead of being the subject of a death pool in the office of my personal family doctor, but the poster child of his breakthrough health. And I think I can. And all of you, and we care about every one of you, each and every one of you listening to this. If you're infirmed, if you've got some issues, you've got some problems, good night. Everyone's overweight. So please take the advice that's being given and put it to work, because you can listen to things and not do anything. What good is that? It's not going to help you. So I can say this. I can attest to everything that Ted's talking about tonight, and I highly recommend this from personal experience. Not because certainly not because we get paid to say it, but from personal experience. Healthmasters.com, Breakthrough Health. And folks, we know 2015, we know things are going to get bad. So let's not exacerbate the situation by being our own worst enemies. Let's straighten up and do what we can for ourselves. And Ted is a man of God, and he really has. Ted, I got to tell you, I was surprised. I pulled that clip out about Russia and World War III there. I was just surprised that when I re-listened to the December 18th broadcast, I was just surprised about the depth of knowledge you have about so many issues and how well read and well informed you are. And that's not false flattery. That's just plain and simple observations. I mean, you know about everything from chemtrails to you name it. And I want to thank you for sharing your information with our listening audience. I think that it's, again, a very valuable insight, and we appreciate you being here with us and taking your time out.
Doug, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the compliment. I also really enjoyed listening to the Paul McGuire segment there. You're going to have to get him on my show with me on the Power Hour. He's a hard guy to get in touch with, so I'd like to have him on that show too, because I think that the insights that he also shares on your show and through his articles that he writes are just so amazing and so good. And I just think that guy's he's off the charts as far as smart. He's amazing to me how good he is, and he's such a good communicator too. And when he says stuff, it just really gets people's attention. It's like Tom Horn. When Tom Horn was with me last week, it was funny because actually, I guess it was the beginning of this week on Tuesday, he was talking for about 20 minutes, and my phone lines didn't light up because everybody was listening to what he was saying. He was talking about the pentagram of Washington, D.C. being designed with an open leg. Because Washington, D.C. is laid out as a pentagram, and I had known all of this, and I asked him about this because he wanted to talk about transhumanism, and I kind of dropped one on him real fast. I said, "Well, Tom, the one thing that you really talked about the time that all the books that I've read that you've written, which I was recommending everybody read his books, was that when you were talking about how the United States was laid out, the Capitol in Washington, D.C. was laid out in a giant pentagram, and as a Luciferian symbol, and it had an open leg on the pentagram, which goes back to Faust." And it goes back to Mephistopheles and how they trapped Lucifer inside of the pentagram with the open leg and had to make a bargain with the devil. And could you explain that to me? And he started talking. He says the open leg of the pentagram is specifically designed to trap Lucifer in Washington, D.C., and basically to be able to generate the seething energies of Lucifer from our nation's capital. And I mean, this is just, and the thing about it is the first time you read this stuff, especially when you're a researcher like I am, I mean, when you're a biochemist, I mean, when you've been trained with this empirical mindset all the time of, you've got to have quantitative reviews and, and double peer blinded studies and reviews and all this other kind of stuff, and you start reading all of this stuff about what really happened with the founding of our forefathers with this country in the pentagram in Washington, D.C., you kind of go, well, that's just odd. I don't know if I buy all that. But the thing about it is, it's true. And then he started talking about the invocation ceremony of Osiris for all the presidents of the United States. They do this in their Masonic thing up there in Washington, D.C., which he was in. He talked about this in depth. And basically he says they actually impart this spirit of Osiris into all U.S. presidents when they're inaugurated for them to be basically demon-possessed. And, I mean, so we're talking about all of this stuff on the show the other day, and the phones aren't lit up. And I'm thinking to myself, either everybody's like, sleeping here, or they're not hearing what I'm hearing. And so finally I said, okay, guys, we got some phone calls coming in for Tom. Here's the phone number. And I mean, the entire, everything lit up. All the phones like stock locked up for the next 40 minutes. And I mean, he could have stayed for 3 hours. But has Tom ever talked about that stuff on your show?
Yeah, he has, as a matter of fact. And Ted, last night we talked about some of that, extracting a lot of the information that we talked about with respect to Washington, D.C., the layout, the cornerstone of the Capitol, and so on, and the Masonic influence. We talked about that last night. We had a special New Year's Day show, and I got to tell you, it was pretty well received. We got a lot of emails about that. So, yeah, but Tom Horn can do so much more. We didn't get into the open leg of the pentagram only because ran out of time. But it's amazing, and to hear Tom talk about the discussions about Bush and others talking about the angel of the whirlwind. We talk about that a lot too. Yeah, it's really it does make you wonder. When I first heard it as an investigator, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this sounds pretty fanciful. It sounds pretty out there. But when you really dig deep into researching where we've been, or all of this, the historical aspects of this, you can't deny it. I mean, it's undeniable, and it wakes you up. It's like a kick in the gut. And of course, we have the presidents, all facing the obelisk, the great phallic symbol, and taking the oaths of office, at least the public ones anyway. So yeah, I mean, man, it's incredible.
Well, no, it all goes back to Egyptian, the Egyptian worship of Osiris and all the gods of the Egyptians. It all goes back to the children of Israel basically being in Egypt for 400 years. I mean, that's what it all goes back to. It all goes back to them worshiping the golden calf and Moses up on the mountain getting the Ten Commandments, and and half of them being, or a whole bunch of them being killed by an earthquake that opens up because they refuse to give up their old ways. It goes back to the Israelites being left in the desert to die for 40 years trying to get all that mess out of them, and it didn't help. And and it goes right back through all of the different things with the Rothschild banking cartel and all their satanic worship that they do. And the whole thing about it is that when you realize what's really going on, you kind of sit there and you go, and you kind of in your bottom line is you just kind of say, "Come quickly, Lord Jesus," because the reality is that this thing is so obfuscated, and we've been told so many lies about so much stuff, and the American population has been completely dumbed down because of the chemtrails and the GMOs and the fluoride and the statin drugs and the tricyclic antidepressants, that we think that what we hear is the truth. We think that when we turn on CNN that people are actually telling us the truth, and we sit there in an alpha brainwave state because of the TV set, because of the frequency that is generating into our brains, and we sit there and we just believe everything as we drink our aspartame, which is a brain entrainment molecule, and that was basically brought to us by the CIA. And you kind of go, how in the world did we get to this point? What happened to Gomer Pyle and Bewitched and Father's Knows Best and The Amazing Adventures of Superman, and Gilligan's Island, to every perverted sitcom on the planet now you can turn and watch on TV? Even the Disney Channel is filled with filth. And you think, how did this happen? How did this happen in just 50 short years? Well, it was planned. They planned it to do this. They wanted to destroy the United States from a cultural standpoint, and they've done that. And they basically stopped raising little Americans. They made sure we stopped doing that when they took God out of the school systems. And the sad part about it is it's getting worse and worse and worse every single day, culminating now to leading the world when it comes to heart disease, to diabetes, to cancer, having one of the highest infant death rates of any industrialized nation. The leading cause of death on our kids being cancer, other than accidents. I mean, it's unbelievable what's happened in the United States and how our culture has deteriorated because of the liars in Washington who constantly lie to us. I mean, and do things they tell us they're not going to do when we vote for them, and they run for office and they tell us they're going to do all of this stuff, and then within 2 to 4 years or 6 years, they're just as corrupt as the rest of them, the majority of them, not all of them. And you kind of sit there and go, wow, is it that messed up, or is it just everybody who gets up there gets so discouraged because it's so corrupt and so evil, or they have so much trash on them, or they dig into their backgrounds and they find something wrong they did once in their life and they threaten to blackmail them with it, is that what in the world, why would they change like that? Why would they go up there with these good intentions and then turn right back around within just a few short years and become as big a part of the problem, another son of hell like the rest of these folks up there? And the sad part about it is you say, well, it wouldn't happen to me. Well, I don't guess it happened to Ron Paul, and I guess it didn't happen to Rand Paul, but I kind of had a problem with Rand Paul when he turned against his own dad when he was running for the presidential nomination and endorsed Romney. I mean, I thought that was a bit odd, and you know, I don't understand. I still don't understand, and Rand Paul has never really given a clear explanation why he would do that to his own father. So I mean, so the whole thing is strange. Now it looks like we're going to have a repeat of the Clinton Bush dynasty running for office again for 2016, and the American people and the GOP people who were so dyed-in-the-wool GOP. I was on a talk show the other night. It was so funny, Doug. It was one of the largest talk shows in the United States, and I was doing a show for like 15 minutes, and I didn't realize how big the show was when I did it. It actually crashed my website. And what was funny is I was sitting there, and he was talking about all of the horrible things that Obama did. Just talking about this at Obama, that Obama, this Obama, that Obama. And I'm going, yeah, you're right. Obama did this, and Obama did that, and Obama did this. But wait a minute now. I said, we need to talk about 9/11 and George Bush. Patriot Act.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and he said, he got real quiet. And I said, and if anybody really thinks that Building 7 fell down by itself, I said, you need to go take some more Prozac because you're obviously on the meds, and he or something like that. And he got real quiet. He goes, well, Dr. Brower, so good to have you on tonight. Blah 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 blah. And that was it. Gone. It's gone that fast. And it was so funny. He came in after I did that and made this huge disclaimer about 9/11, and anybody who thought that the government wasn't telling us the truth about 9/11 and George Bush was obviously terribly mistaken. And he said that after I was off the air, and I had some friends who were listening to this national talk show who heard him say that about me. Now, of course, I don't think I'll be asked back on, but as long as I wanted to play partisan politics with him and not mention anything about what George Bush did or George Bush's dad or George Bush's grandfather who basically funded Hitler, as long as I didn't want to talk about Prescott Bush or anybody else in the Bush clan with the Republicans, let's not talk about Bohemian Grove, and for heaven's sakes, if we're going to not talk about Bohemian Grove, let's not talk about all the other things that they've done and all the evil stuff this administration has done with torture. Let's not talk about any of that stuff, because they don't want to mention that because they're playing partisan politics. Because basically, Mancow said this to me the other day. You guys need to have him on, too, for one of your segments. He was one of the top radio talk show hosts in the world. And he basically retired now at the age of 50. And he was on with me for an hour the other day. And what was interesting with Mancow, he said he could have had one of the biggest shows in America if he played partisan politics. And see, this is what Mike Savage does. And I like Mike Savage. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a great broadcaster, brilliant man, epidemiologist. I read his book, The Coming Civil War, and it was all about the Democrats, all about the communists, nothing about Bush, nothing about 9/11, nothing about any side of it. It was all partisan politics. And Mancow said I could have one of the biggest shows in the United States if I played partisan politics, if I played on the left or I played on the right. He said it doesn't matter where you play. He says, as long as you keep the people polarized to the right or to the left, the globalists don't care because you're obfuscating the truth of what's really happening, and you're forcing them to keep their eyes closed because they continue to believe the lie.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
I just said a whole bunch there.
No, you sure did, and it's programs. Dare I say, like this and others like it. We don't play that partisan politics stuff. Now,
no.
I used to be, I used to be the biggest a neocon, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. I believed 9/11 following that. I believed that was down there, but right after it happened, looking at the blood stains on the concrete and thinking, my gosh, we really need to go pound the hell out of Afghanistan and whoever else did this. And then it really was uncomfortable for me to wake up. And I got to tell you, it was a very slow and arduous process. And even George Norrie, off air one time, he said, "What happened to you? What happened to you?" Because when I first met you, you were all for the neocon machinery, the war machine, and now you're questioning everything. And I said, it's something when the truth finally you finally come to the realization that you've been lied to for so long by so many over so much, and that's kind of what where I'm at now. And Ted, I guess you probably didn't fall for the lie. I suspect you were probably a lot more on target than I was.
Well, no. What happened? What happened, Doug? I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the air or not. Back in about the late '80s, I had a person give me The Unseen Hand. And a very interesting book. And I tried to bring him on, Ralph Epperson. I was going to bring him on the talk show with me on the Power Hour because he was the first book that I ever read on that. That and another booklet you can get for free online. It's called Billions for the Bankers and Debts for the People by Shelton Emery. He's a pastor. I'm going to repeat that. Billions for the Bankers and Debts for the People by Shelton Emery. And I read these books like in the late 80s. And I had another friend of mine who was sending me Donald McIlvaney's newsletters. And finally, I saw what was going on, and I just put a cover over it. I said I can't deal with this because that was right when I was in the seminar circuit and everything else, and I couldn't deal with all that. It was so unbelievably negative. I thought I'm in my peak income years right now. I'm on the circuit with all these presidents and all this other kind of stuff. I can't be losing focus right now. I've got to stay with what I'm doing. Okay, I've got to stay focused. And I did. I stayed focused, and I kind of put all that stuff behind. I canceled the McIlvaney subscription that I was getting. I told Kevin to quit sending me all that information, and I went back to sleep. I climbed back into my D-cell battery, and I started powering up the matrix again. And I sat there for about 10 years. And finally, in about 2001, when the trade towers fell, I was in my living room looking at them, and I saw that building come down, both of them, and I said, "That's a controlled demolition. Something happened there. Those buildings don't fall like that. They're steel and concrete. I mean, I've had enough engineering and calculus, and stuff doesn't happen. If you understand what calculus is and how they do this in engineering, I took a full year of calculus. I mean, all of those loads are calculated not to do that. And I thought, I could have calculated the loads on those I-beams on how to make sure they could handle the weight of an aircraft impact, which is what they were designed for. Why do they fall like that? And then, of course, I don't even know about Building 7 because they don't even talk about that. And about 2 or 3 years later, it's like 2003, 2004, now all my kids were born, and I'm just chilling out in life. It's kind of been a semi-retirement mode, and I was watching some Olympic thing, and some Olympic guy in China had basically been attacked by one of the refs got attacked, and there was a little bit of a little header underneath the thing said, "Find out what really happened with 9/11." And they had a video on there that was called 9/11 Mysteries, and I watched this thing, and I had that slow internet back then. Oh gosh! And I mean, it would stop and start and stop and start. It's like an hour and a half, 2-hour movie, and it took me like 6 hours to get through it, right? Because it was start and stop. And finally, I watched it all, and I thought, this is messed up. And then they're talking about Building 7. They're talking about the gold, and when the trade towers had disappeared, and all the stuff that was going on. And I think to myself, this is just wrong. There's something wrong here. Then I started thinking, oh, God, I got to climb back out of my battery cell again. I got to stop powering up the matrix, and I got to start doing some more research. And so about 10 years ago, it's been now, I guess, I started really, really, really hammering the research and reading the books and finding out more and more. And then I got that one book, Brotherhood of Darkness by Stanley Monteith, God rest his soul, fine gentleman. I was on his show many times. That really woke me up as what the Rothschild banking cartel was all about and the synagogue of Satan. And I thought, oh, God, that's nuts. And then I started reading, the Fourth Reich with Jim Marrs. And I've read this a plethora, hundreds of books since then, and thousands of articles. And so now I'm like awake. I mean, just really probably more awake than the globalists want me to be, because I'm also a researcher, and I'm kind of like a pit bull. Once I decide I'm looking for something and trying to find something that's going to be an answer for something, I just don't quit. Well, the problem with this stupid maze is that this rabbit hole is so deep and so far down, it's so dark, that once you start digging down into it, you start finding all the other little wormholes that lead in all these different directions, and it all goes back down to Satanism. That's what it all boils back down to. Every time you get to a major player in this field and you dig down deep enough, it always goes back to Luciferianism, and that's what it always goes back to. And it always goes back to the evil of this world and Lucifer, and them trying to do the epigenetics or whatever they're trying to do with the Roundup or the crops or the corn or whatever the corn or whatever they're doing to us to just try to destroy God's children. That's what it all boils down to, because they don't consider us to be humans. They consider us to be goyim. That's what they call us. They consider us to be animals, to be harvested or slaughtered, and that's all we are to them. And if you don't understand that, then you need to wake up, because these people are basically trying to promote transhumanism. They're trying to meld themselves with machines so they're never going to die, because they don't want to go to the next level, because they know what's there, because they've already read the book of Isaiah in chapter 15, and they're going to realize real quick that Lucifer, who was supposed to be the one taking care of all this and helping them through all this, he's down there in chains with the rest of them. And then the thing about it is that if we look at what's really happening globally and we see the truth will set us free. And it'll say, hey, look, maybe I need to stay in shape. Hey, maybe I need to drop the 100 pounds. Hey, maybe I need to turn off the idiot TV for a bit and stop watching all that junk and putting all that trash in my mind that's not even true. And, just maybe I don't need to be, promoting all of this stuff the world promotes anymore. And just maybe I need to learn how to walk and love, get into shape, and learn how to fire a gun and store some food and just say, okay, God, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Maybe I should pray like it's all up to God and work like it's all up to me. The old German plaque that I have hanging in my wall in my house that says "Zwei Lebensstützen brechen nie, Gebet und Arbeit heißen sie," which means there's two fundamental principles in life that you can always depend on, are prayer and work. Maybe we need to realize that that's still the truth, the same as it was yesterday and today and forever. And see, we need to understand that this thing with God isn't a joke. He's real. He put us here as His children in His image. We're like on a proving ground, so to speak, on this planet to see what we're going to do with our lives. And a lot of what happens, I believe, in the next life is based upon what we do in this life. And if we can't be a well-done, good and faithful servant while we're here, why do we think we're going to be getting the rewards in heaven that we think we're going to be getting? I mean, why do we think that we're going to do any better than heaven than we did here? If we're unwilling to wake up and look at the truth of what's really going on, if we're unwilling to walk in love and pray for people, I mean, you got to realize, guys, if you got bitterness and envy and hatred in your heart, you got to pray about that. Those things aren't going to hurt the other person. They're probably in bed sleeping with their covers pulled over their heads while you're all mad about it, or they're already dead and gone, and you're still mad about it. I mean, I saw my brother a few years ago in Iowa. My dad got divorced from his first wife. My dad did. Met my mom, and they got married. And then my half-brother in Iowa, my dad's been dead now since 1984, right, with that 31 years. And I saw him a couple of years ago. He is still so angry, he doesn't even want to mention my father's name after all of these years. And I looked at him and I said, Lowell, I said, here's the deal, dude. I said, Dad is dead. I said, you being angry at Dad doesn't do anything to Dad. He's up in the arms of Jesus right now, looking down on you, praying for you, I guess. You're the one who's got all this bitterness and anger in you. I said, you need to stop doing this. I said, this isn't any good for your health. And, of course, he has all these health problems. But the point is, Doug, if we don't learn how to walk in love and forgiveness for people who've been dead for 30 years, how are we supposed to forgive the living if we can't forgive the dead? Does that make any sense?
No. Makes perfect sense.
And I pray for Obama, I pray for Washington, and I don't pray for horrible things to happen to them. I pray for the truth to be revealed. Because I've learned something about me. When I pray for stuff, things happen. I don't want to pray that the United States or somebody in the United States assassinates President Obama. That'll turn that joker into a stinking martyr and probably put us all into martial law. I don't want that. I want him to gracefully leave in a couple of years, not to deal with looking at him anymore. That's what I want. I mean, I've had enough of all of this nonsense with him. But that's the same way I felt about Bush before he left. I couldn't even watch him on TV. I've never watched one Obama speech because of the lies. Because when you know they're lying about everything, you don't know what to say to them. Because you don't believe them. So why are you listening to them? And I felt the same way about Clinton. I felt the same way about Hillary. I felt the same way about George Bush Sr. I didn't feel that way about Ronald Reagan. I used to always enjoy listening to his speeches. I really liked him. And I certainly, when I was younger, I didn't feel that way about John F. Kennedy, who I feel was the best president of my lifetime was John F. Kennedy. I mean, he certainly got himself killed, and I'm sure that was because of his executive order, 11110, with the Federal Reserve thing, reprinting silver certificates, and also with his stuff with it. And by the way, he was a big proponent of releasing all of the Roswell information, by the way, according to this colonel in this book, The Day After Roswell. He was a big proponent of that, and he wanted to release the information. And then some people say that's one of the other reasons he was killed. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting, yeah. Wow. Yeah, I knew about the executive order, of course, but the Roswell information, not so much, but certainly would make sense. My goodness.
Well, once you read the Roswell, I'm going to have to send you that book. And have you ordered it yet?
No, but I'll tell you what. We can here after tonight's show, and I've got this growing list of books that I need to get. That being on the top. So fear not, we'll get that here in before the next time we talk. I'm sure. The point, and I don't know if all that stuff in the books is real. See, here's the thing, and people are always saying, "Well, do you believe all this stuff is real?" What stuff? I mean, and I always say, then my next question is, what stuff? And I say, well, do you believe the moon landing is real? And I'm like,
I said, we certainly have the technology to go to the moon landing. Whether or not the moon landing was staged or we already had other technology for the moon landing, I don't know. I said whether the TV, some of the film was staged, which obviously it was, by the research that could be done on that. I don't know. I wasn't on the moon. Don't care. Whatever. I mean, I hope we went. That's all I got to say, because I've gotten to that point now. The government has lied so much. I've gotten so cynical about so much of this stuff, Doug. Unless I personally experienced it, I have a hesitancy to say I believe that's true. Now, when I do the research on stuff and I see stuff like when I checked my own rainwater for aluminum and barium and I saw that it was true, okay, I fully believe that that's in the air and water now that we're drinking and the crops that we're planting. But the point is, it's just there's so much obfuscation out there. You've got to basically go with reputable sources like you guys, or with Paul McGuire, there's so many good sources.
Well, absolutely. Ted, let me ask you a question now here. If we're all being poisoned, and this is something that's bothered me so much and so long, and a question I've got, if we're all being subjected to this aluminum and barium in our drinking water, and we have the genetically modified food and everything you talk about, how are the elites, the globalists, the people that are responsible ultimately for all of this, how are they not being affected by this? How are they protecting themselves, or are they protecting themselves?
The same way I do. Every month I try to go have an injection of EDTA directly into my bloodstream, and it picks up all the heavy metals. It picks up the aluminum, it picks up the lead, it picks up the mercury, it picks up the barium, it picks up anything that I've absorbed through my skin or through my nasal passages. It also picks up any kind of toxicity from anything I'd be eating as far as heavy metal toxicity. EDTA. You can also take it orally, but it's not as effective, but it's still good to take it orally. And they do that on a regular basis. And if they have these diseases they're going to release on us, like Ebola, they're really going to have the real immunizations. They don't have all the adjuvants and all the junk stuff in them to begin with. They'll have that ability to stay healthy without that. I mean, they fly with their own planes, and the planes behind them fly behind them, bringing their non-GMO organic food with them, and they have to bring their own chefs everywhere they go with their organic food. I mean, that's how they do it. I mean, they do it the same way I do it. They eat organic food. They do EDTA, and they don't drink the fluoride. And that's what they do. I mean, that's the only way you can do it, Doug. I mean, there's no other way out
simple
of it. I mean,
as that.
you could. Yeah, it's just that simple. You could. That's why my mental acuity is still so high, and I'm almost 60, because I don't allow myself to be, infused with aluminum. I make sure I do my EDTA shots every month. And one of the side effects of that is it actually has been shown to reduce the risks of atherosclerotic plaquing and calcium buildup in the arteries for hardening of the arteries, and it's actually been shown to massively increase blood flow to the brain, plus taking all the heavy metals back out of your body. And that's why you can do a hair analysis, and you can determine what type of heavy metal toxicity you might have if you haven't been given some exotic metal that's poisonous that's not tested on hair analysis, like some kind of radioactive isotope that's going to kill you in a few weeks or destroy your memory or destroy your mind. Okay, we have, I think we test for 40 different metals, including lead, arsenic, mercury, that kind of stuff, and you can get that tested. In addition to that, you can do the EDTA. If you haven't got somebody local that can do it, you can at least take it orally. It's not going to hurt a thing. And see, the reason they first discovered that, I think we mentioned that on one of your shows, I can't remember anymore, we talked about so much stuff, is the German painters in World War II that were painting all the battleships were spraying with lead paint, and they were all dropping IQ points because the lead was poisoning their brains. So they had to find a way to bring these painters back, these skilled laborers back for these ships without poisoning them. So what they did is they developed this compound, I think it's called ethylene ditetracetic acid, but that's not quite right, but that's close. That's the EDTA. And what it does, it chelates, or claws is the Latin term for chelates, these heavy metals like lead and arsenic and mercury, and it attaches to them, pulls them back out of the system, and they're excreted through the kidneys and through the colon. That's how it works. And so what happens with all that stuff is that the poison comes back out of your body the same way. And that has to be what they're doing, Doug. Or they've got some other advanced way of doing it. But they have to be doing something like that. Otherwise, you're absolutely right. They're going to be suffering from the same deleterious effects that they're causing on everybody else. And so I have to assume that's what they're doing, and that's why they want to ban chelation therapy. They want to ban vitamins. They want to put GMO in everything. They want to prevent us from having the ability of stopping GMO. They don't want us to label GMOs. They want to contaminate the whole planet with GMOs. And I tell you what, this is if you want, whatever you want to call these aliens and Roswell, if you want to call them fallen angels, which is what Chuck Missler calls them, I think Tom Horn feels is the same thing. You always ask him on that. you know, the whole thing about it is that these people don't have our best interests in heart. And that colonel who writes that book the day after Roswell, he says that. He goes, one thing he said after all the research that he did on this and all the involvement he had, he goes, these people don't have our best interest. And he goes to the weapon-based platforms that they built in space based on Tesla technology and the alien technology are mainly faced outward into the cosmos to prevent these people from coming in and doing some type of planetary invasion on us. I mean, he talks about this openly in the book. And he says that now he feels as though that the United States is prepared for this. We're back in 1947 when that craft first landed. Remember, this is a full-bird colonel with multiple general endorsements, including one of the prime ministers of Canada, Hellyer, in his book, The Money Mafia. I mean, so this isn't some yak yahoo who's writing this stuff. I mean, these are top officers in the military that are saying this stuff. So the truth is, these guys don't have our best interest at heart.
No, you're absolutely right.
These aliens.
And if I can, I want to read something to you from a publication from the FDA talking about the safety of vaccines for children and the aluminum that's in the vaccine. They say that there is a public who are talking about the risk posed to infants from receiving vaccines that contain aluminum, but they say that the children are able to filter out the toxic substances through their kidneys and that the levels are safe in the body. The levels of aluminum are a safe level. So there is no risk to the children for aluminum-containing vaccines, and they say little to low to extremely low risk for infants. What would you say to that?
That's just another lie. I mean, just another lie. Infants have brain inflammation that's really bad with the kids. I mean, you got the GMOs, you got the gluten intolerance, you got the leaky gut syndrome, you got all of the processed formulas these babies are being raised on that are almost all GMO, especially with the soy. You get all these poisons we're giving these kids and all these injections, all this massive brain inflammation, reduction of IQ scores. It's all just lies. I mean, they're there to poison us. That's their primary motive. I mean, you got to remember, the Bible says that Satan comes to rob, kill, steal, and destroy. He doesn't come to make you healthier. He doesn't come to make you feel better. He doesn't come to give you more stuff. He comes to rob, kill, steal, and destroy. That's what he does. He's
under the guise
of liar.
goodness.
He's the father of lies.
Yeah.
It's all about yes, right. It's all a bunch of lies. I mean, so remember a few years ago they had a study that came out that said that mercury was actually healthy and good for children and helped increase their IQ scores. And they published it. They published it. It's a known neurotoxin. They published it. Mercury is actually healthy for children. I mean, and people say, "Oh, look, mercury is good for you." I mean, are you kidding me? Drop a mercury thermometer in a school, watch hazmat come in and have the entire school closed because it's so poisonous they have to shut the whole school down. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's like the Gardasil shots for the boys they tried to do in Texas. Rick Perry tried to implement that in Texas, and then the mandatory for girls who were in junior high school.
Now we have all these girls that are sterilized, and the flu shots and the tetanus shot and all the stuff that were used in third world countries that were specifically designed to basically have antibodies against pregnancy in them that cause the women to spontaneously abort. I mean, we could just go on and on and on. This whole thing, I mean, this is uber evil. Now let me make a point here. We got too many people in third world countries, basically, that are reproducing. All right, I got that. I'm not even arguing that, okay? Here's the point about that is, why don't we teach them proper contraception and all these other types of things they can do? Why don't we go in there and have a voluntary thing in which we say, why don't we do this, guys? We're going to give you this shot. It's going to prevent you from having any more kids. So you don't have to worry about trying to feed the kids. And tell the people the truth about what they're doing to them instead of just lying to them and telling them it's a tetanus shot, like they did in Kenya. I mean, that's the problem that I have with all of this subterfuge, is the fact that it's okay to poison these people, and it's not okay to tell them what you're doing, and it's not okay to give them an option of what they want to have done. Maybe they don't want to have any more kids. Have you thought about that? Maybe you could ask them, say, hey, wait a minute, guys, you can't feed your kids and have people in this village are starving. Would you like to know how to prevent unwanted pregnancy? Why don't we teach you how to do that? Okay, instead of causing all of these kids to die after they've been born like this. This is insane. And they go back, but it goes back to the Luciferian agenda. It goes back to Baal. It goes back to Moloch. It goes back to the Old Testament. It goes back to burning your children in the altars on the high places to Baal. It goes back to human sacrifice. It goes back to releasing their spirit into the air, I guess, so Lucifer can try to do what he's going to do with all the children's souls that are being released. I don't know what these wackos are doing, but these people are some sickos, dude. I mean, these guys are messed up in the head, and they really believe they're right, and they really believe that Lucifer's the good guy and our God's the bad guy. That's how messed up they are, and that's why I said on that one show that we did a few weeks ago with you, I said, if Lucifer's the good guy, why in the world does he want you to sacrifice your children? That didn't make any sense to me. Why don't you think through this, you know, and figure out what in the world but I'm right? Am I right? I mean, think about it.
You're absolutely right, man.
People will seek any explanation or alternative to Jesus being the one and true and only Savior of mankind. I mean, any theory, they throw out there, people jump to.
Here's how it was explained to me one time, and I thought this was a good explanation, and I've never heard this in any Bible books, so this isn't like, documented scripture, but it kind of explains how it all works. There's like 13 known dimensions in the universe, according to a lot of physicists. God's in the upper dimension, like in the 13th level. He cast Lucifer down from heaven. That's what the word says. He cast him down. So we know he's in a lower dimension. But the 12th, 11th, and 10th, and wherever Lucifer is, he still has dominion over all the lower dimensions, over this planet, over this earth. And these people who sacrifice to him, he gives them power, gives them things, gives them prestige, gives them homes, gives them money, gives them record contracts. All they've got to do is sell their soul. That's all they've got to do, I guess. They think that's okay. Well, the reality is, that's what he does. And so what happens is people understand when you become a Christian, everybody listen to me, through your pineal gland, your cord of living water, you're basically attached to God in the 13th dimension through your soul. That's what that's basically all about. And your soul's attached to God when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And when you become attached to God in the 13th dimension, he gives you dominion over all of this stuff. That's why Jesus says that the devil is under our feet again, because we have Jesus. That's why he hates Christians so much, because when we become a Christian and we're engrafted into God as a blood covenant through Christ, then we have authority over the devil, which is what the Word tells us. And then the devil's under our feet, and he has no authority. He can do nothing to us. And see, that's what people don't get, is the authority of Christians and what we have. That's why the world hates Christians. That's why Lucifer hates Christians. You can be a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Jew, whatever you want to be. It doesn't make any difference. They'll pretty much leave you alone. You're a born-again child of God Christian, and you're in covenant with the Most High, and you're engrafted into Him, into His DNA with the blood covenant, and He gives you part of His omnipotence, omniscience, and authority, and we have the ability to pray and come directly into the throne of God and pray. What an incredible covenant, what an incredible God we have, that He allowed us to do that through Jesus. I mean, it changed everything when He did that, and nobody gets that. I mean, the power that we have as Christians that Paul McGuire talks about, the dunamis, the dynamite, the power we have when we pray. That's why we get up every morning, me, my family, my kids, all of us pray out loud every single day, and we put the words into the atmosphere, into the power, into this holographic sound matrix that we've been put into. The power that we have as Christians is unbelievable, the authority. That's why earlier I was saying I don't pray negative things, because I start praying stuff, things start changing, things start happening. I've seen it over and over and over in my life. That's why I told you the very first time I was on with you, almost a year ago now, I said I always pray in the positive. I pray in the affirmation. I don't pray for God not to kill me. I pray for God to bless me, to take care of me, to protect me. You've got to learn to pray in the positive, because guys, you don't understand. When you go into the throne room of God Almighty, when you go into the inner sanctum, when you go into the Holy of Holies, and you come there through Christ Jesus, you can walk boldly before God Almighty and pray and petition Him, you got the attention of the Creator of the universe looking at you and listening to you. You better be careful what you say, and you better be walking in love, and you better not be praying negative things on other people.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that. Ted, we only have about 10 minutes left of the program. I cannot believe this. I think Monday I'm gonna get in my car tonight after the program, drive down to where you're at, and I'll do the show in person with you on Monday morning. But
come on down, we'll have fun with that.
And spend the rest of the day and next day with you, and then eat well and converse. I could talk to you, 24/7. But let me ask you this: you mentioned epigenetics and the the DNA and DNA traits and such. You mentioned something just moments ago here about the 13 dimensions and about the pineal gland, us being attached to God. Is it possible, and I never really thought about it this way, it's my understanding that DNA, we've got individual harmonics associated with our DNA. Is it possible that the GMO protocol that was established whenever and implemented by the Luciferians, is it possible that one of the goals, or at least one of the collateral effects, is to affect our harmonics of our DNA with God, therefore redirecting that harmonics instead of to God, to Lucifer, or away from God?
No, absolutely. No, that's right. Because see, if we no longer are humans, if we become animals because our DNA's been changed, and our harmonics and our frequencies and everything change, and we no longer have the ability to access into God's dimension because we've been altered physically. I mean, that's like the mark of the beast, right? Then basically there is no redemption for that. I mean, how do we know the mark of the beast is going to be some type of chip or some kind of injection they're going to put into us that's going to change our genetics permanently? I mean, how do we know that's not going to happen? I mean, so that's the whole thing that Tom Horn talks about when he talks about transhumanism. I mean, if they all remember what Jesus, always remember in the book of Genesis, it talks about what happened in Genesis chapter 6 with the giants and everything else, and the sons of the fallen and all the things with the angels, and then it goes back to we have to go back to the book of Enoch to figure that out. There's a really good video that you can watch. It's on God, it's on aliens and demons and the humans and the fall of man and all that. It's called The Theory of Everything, and it's by Trey Smith, Trey. It's free. You watch it on YouTube. Trey Smith. He's got like 3 million views on this thing. One of the most astounding things that I've ever watched on the dimensions and the unseen world and demons and aliens and all of the rest of this stuff. And if you watch it, it'll blow your mind. This guy he's an incredible communicator. I loved it. It's about an hour and a half long. And instead of just chilling out watching a basketball game or a football game on TV, just turn on Trey Smith and watch this stuff. I've never met Trey, but I want to get him on my talk show on the Power Hour and basically interview him because he's that good. And he has the dubious distinction back before he got saved of robbing a TV evangelist of his safe and basically discovering this guy's full porn collection and his walk-in safe, TV evangelist. He wrote a book on it. He wrote a book on it, and it's very interesting. I ordered the book and I read it. And I'm telling you guys, there's some bad language in the book, but that's because he was not saved when he wrote the book. But the reality is this. He really exposes the entire financial fraud of a lot of these TV evangelists in that book, and it's an eye opener. I mean, I thought this guy who he's talking about in the book was a scumbucket. I had no idea how bad gets. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. I mean, this guy's talking about conjuring up demons out of the corners and stuff like that with the words of his mouth, talking straight witchcraft and Satanism. And he quotes this guy.
Wait a minute, the evangelist? Really?
The evangelist is doing this, yeah.
Oh no!
but I wouldn't call him an evangelist. I'd call him a TV shyster, is what he is on the Christian channels. And Trey Smith exposes this guy, and it's unbelievable when you read this book. I'm like, oh my gosh! In fact, I ordered a copy for my pastor. I go to a large Baptist church here in town, and I told him about this guy, and he said he wanted to get a copy of the book, and I said I'd order it for him, and I did. And I gave it to him. He said he read every book, every page of it. He says, Ted, I knew it was bad. He said I had no idea how bad it is. And so I'm going to tell everybody listening again. Yeah, you listen to me, please listen to me. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I haven't mentioned one name about any of this stuff except for Trey Smith because I like his video on the Egyptian stuff and stuff on YouTube, but I've been behind the scenes with a lot of these TV ministries, okay? I don't send any of them any money. I don't do that. I don't do that. And I keep my money locally in my own church, in my own community, because there's a lot of things that I saw that I didn't like. I'm not mentioning any names. I mean, I've seen alcoholism. I've seen homosexuality. I've seen drug abuse. I've seen all of it in these TV evangelists, in a whole bunch of them. I mean, I've personally seen them drunk. Okay, so I'm not going to paint names because I don't do that, because I don't want to sow that kind of seed. But the point is just keep your money local. Good grief.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Find yourself
absolutely.
a godly church, or support people like Paul McGuire, or a guy out there in Montana, Chuck Baldwin. I mean, people that are telling the truth. If you want to just donate to ministries, but don't be giving money to these TV guys. I'm telling you guys, they're not all like that, but enough of them are like that I'm jaded from this stuff. And because I've seen it. I've been behind the scenes in these rooms. I mean, I've seen them walk on the platform totally drunk.
Oh man!
And this is where discernment comes in, and prayer, and if you feel led to donate to a ministry, that's something that you need to pray and ask the Lord for.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And folks, Ted Broer has been behind the scenes. If you read his biography, if you look at the photographs on his website, you can see exactly that he knows of which he speaks. I just got a note, Ted, an email from my wife listening to the broadcast. She wants to thank you as well. Of course, she has arthritis problems, and she says that, and we talked about this before the program too. She said that she's feeling better, of course, after doing what you have recommended. So, folks, this does work. Also, the email did say that, tell Ted that I ordered The Day After Roswell for You by Philip Corso. So
I was thinking, I was fixing to send that to you. You know that.
Well, yeah. But she said it should be here by Monday. So it's very interesting. But I just want to thank you so much. And we have such a great time being together. And you know what? We owe you so much. We really do. So Monday we'll be on our best. We'll be well rested and ready to rock and roll during the Power Hour, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You'll be hosting that. Fantastic host, fantastic show. Folks, tune in to Ted Broer hosting the Power Hour. My goodness. And support Mr. Broer via his products and his website and his books. And don't forget, folks, we're all under attack here. So if you've read the book, Breakthrough Health, let's go to Amazon and rate it accordingly to get these satanic troll idiots off of there. I'm telling you, man, it's a battle every day. Every time you turn around, it's a battle. But you said some great things. It's one last thing, Ted. I'll say this. I used to say, boy, she makes me, or he makes me, or they make me so angry or so mad. You know what? Nobody makes you mad. You allow it to happen, and I think that's you've got to understand that.
People are masters at manipulating emotions and having people act on the emotion. We need to always just take a step back and think from a point of serenity and peace in our mind. We can't act on the impulses that we get from our own understanding and reactions. This is how we get into trouble. At least that's how I get into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Well, sir, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to cover in about 2.5 minutes?
No, I just wanted people to realize that their health is the most valuable asset, and I want them to treat it accordingly. I mean, if you still have the ability to stand in an upright position with the wind to your back and on it, and walk with a downhill slope, I mean, you could get better. You've got to realize that there's just certain choices that you've got to make. And, and the reality is if you don't make those choices now, when are you going to make those choices? When are you going to start realizing that you are literally what you eat, which we now have learned is completely true with epigenetics, that you can change your own physical DNA by going in and doing the things that you shouldn't do by eating the wrong foods. And you can make yourself sick, and you will pass that on to your children's children. That's the nuttiest part about the epigenetics. And see, the globalists know this. Remember, by the third generation eating GMO corn with the mice, they're completely sterile. They can no longer have children. They have hair growing out of their mouth. They are unbelievably sick all the time. They have extremely short lifespans. That's what their goal is for us. There's too many of us. They can't control us the way they want to. They want to cull the herd, and that's what they're planning on doing. And so, and if you don't want to be part of that, You've got to stand firm, and in the aggregate, we'll believe with you, we'll pray with you that basically you can start making the healthier choices that you need to in order to change your health, to improve your health. And guys, it's not that hard. When I was in graduate school at Florida State, I came down with heart disease at the age of 27, and I was drinking 18 cups of coffee a day, and I was working 100-hour weeks, and I was in bed for 3 months, and I almost died. That was hard, okay, but I still got through that, and I changed everything in my life. It took a period of a few years. It was a gradual transition, but now we eat really, really clean all of the time, because the truth is this: if you don't learn to do it now, when are you going to start? If we have an apocalyptic ending of this country, which it sure seems like it's heading that way, or to the entire planet nonetheless, I mean, what are you going to do if all the stuff hits the fan at once and you can't even get out of the way? You got to get in shape, guys, and women, same thing. You got to think about what you're doing, and you've got to be thinking about your health, and now's the time to do that, not after it's too late.
Amen, brother. Well, I just want to say God bless you. Thank you so much for your gracious gift of your time, and certainly you you did all the heavy lifting in this program, and we thank you for that. What a
fantastic show.
Absolutely. My friend, we're up against it. I just want to say God bless. We'll talk to you Monday morning. Folks, tune in to the Power Hour. Ted Broer on Monday morning. We're honored to be his guests, and I just want to say thank you, my friend. Thank you, and we'll be in touch.
Doug, Joe, thank you so much, guys. Good night.
All right, good night. Folks, that'll do it. Until Monday, stay safe and God bless.
Yep. Have a great weekend.